Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Secretary Annie Fiscus will read your name. Please say here if you are present. Okay, Mike Aldinger. Mike Anderson.
Here.
William Barr. Jim Byrne.
Here.
Ruth. I just got one.
Here.
Kennard. Ralph.
Here.
Sarah Donenberg.
Here.
Adam Perrone.
Here.
Hillary Gupta. Here. Nicholas Heim. Hubert Hines.
Here.
Andrew Karasek.
Here.
Gavin. John King. Peter Corey.
Here.
Caitlin Kunkel. Here. Andrew Koontz. Matthew Lockman. Sean Leonard. Daniel Lersch.
Here.
Sam Lohner.
Here.
Benjamin Lombard.
Here.
Stephen Lucas.
Here.
Nick Mann.
Here.
Sean Malloy.
Here.
Samantha Miller.
Here.
Christopher Morrell.
Here.
Jose Munn. Christopher Knock. Alyssa Ogelberg. Here. Is that how you pronounce your first name?
I go by Ellie.
Ellie, okay, thank you. Joanne Olson. Louis Orazio.
Here.
Luke Pierce. Greg Plum. Brian Holland. Kelly Potter.
Here.
Megan Quinn. Christian Ragland.
Here.
Valerie Russell. Here. Amy Sanders. Here. Carolyn Seberry. Matt Sherrock.
Here.
Philip Slusser.
Here.
Richard Shermansky.
Here.
Colleen Smith. Here. Matthew Smith.
Present.
Michael Smith. Michael Wallace. Cindy Wang. Okay, thank you. I noticed that a lot of members are missing. That's due to illness. Representative Leonard.
Make sure that Mark is here. I was actually doing it.
No, I did.
Sorry. Thank you.
It's okay. A lot of them have told us that they're ill, so we'll inform. So, moving on to item number 2, adoption of the agenda. Are there any objections to Representative Karasek?
I move to move old business and new business to after special presentation. The reason is twofold. Number one, we're trying this out to see if it speeds up the meeting. Number two, it is to such that we can vote on the important pieces of business earlier in the meeting before we all get tired and fatigued, which is actually a synonym.
Okay, and that being because new business would fall just after old business?
Yeah, no, they have to go together.
Yeah.
They have to move together. So so I think we should listen to the special presentations, then go into old business, new business, and then go back to the following. So between 5 and 6.
Okay, is there a second? Any objections? Okay, we will move old business and new business after special presentations. And the agenda is adopted. If there are no further objections.
There's just a point of clarification. Pat Gordon should not be listed under confirmation of executive board nominations due to Galvin's illness, which he has pneumonia right now, which is why he's not at the meeting, if you're wondering. There was some miscommunication with the ID committee, and so Pat was kind of pushed back another week. Just please strike that from the agenda.
Any other objections? Questions? Okay, the agenda is adopted. You'll notice that there are no minutes from the past general meeting. I guess they're being compiled. This is news to me, so.
I sent them out, they just, the girl who was taking the minutes,
Our computer crashed, so there's like big chunks missing. It's not even like in chronological order that things are missing, and there's just like big chunks. So we're gonna look at the video minutes and fix those. Okay. Okay, moving on to item number 3, open student forum. Are there any students here to address the assembly? Okay. Moving on to item number 4, report by the president. Obviously, Mr. Kierans is not here. Oh, okay. So, I'm going to be giving his report. I just found out about this about 5 minutes ago. But you all should have this blue paper that has a bunch of things that went on this week that he did. One, I did not even know that he participated in the Bill Nye thing, so that's very interesting. Also, kind of his requests, mild charges to committee chairs and executive board members are there, and also some comments on the executive board nominations. So I have really like 6 main points. First and foremost, on Monday, we attended the Student Activity Fee Board meeting. I don't sit on that. Gavin and Treasurer Matt Sheriff do. But I sat in the gallery for it, as did a couple others here, and Representative Morrell. I was very disappointed by the meeting. It was a cyclical conversation between UPUA, GSA, and UPAC. And a lot of the administrators that were there, not all of them, administrators and faculty, they just tried to help facilitate that, but I think a lot of them had a kind of a lack of education as to what shared student governance is here at Penn State and what shared governance means all around with faculty and administrators and the like. So basically, there was one resolution brought to the table, and it was tabled until the next meeting, which is November 7th. So I encourage all of you to be there. I know Gavin sent out a very interesting email, and that was kind of, in my opinion, probably an emotional response to the meeting. So you should probably talk to him in person about what you can do to help. Okay, second thing, actually I have 5 main points. Second thing is the Commission for Recreation and Sports. I know Gavin was contacted by some people in that run IM and rec sports and et cetera, whatever you want to call them, and kind of setting up some department within exec would help our facilities committee, things that pertain to facilities on campus that we should probably be cognizant of and participate in the debate, and just trying to alleviate some of the stress that I know that different administrators of IM sports and that kind of that they face day to day. Third point is homecoming parade. Gavin was asked to judge the parade. He might be ill, so I might do it. Representative Morrell? Okay. Fourth point, Sportsmanship Council. We did not meet this week because the other main contact, Adrian, who's the executive director of the Pride Initiative, her boyfriend was in homecoming air bands. Well, he's in homecoming corps, so we decided to hold off on that meeting until, which Representative Miller participated in as well. And so we decided to hold off on that meeting, so I'll be able to report on that next week. Last point is 60-day plans should be totally done and turned into Caitlin Holmes to compile a general UPUA 60-day plan record in collaboration with our Secretary Annie Fiscus. And most importantly on the 60-day plan, hopefully everyone has read the executive 60-day plan that Gavin and I created, and if there are any critiques to that, it would be great if you could send us emails or come up to us and talk to us, because feedback is imperative. So that's that. Any questions?
Are there questions for Vice President? Seeing none.
All right. I got the gavel again. Okay, moving on to special presentations. We have Mr. Ian Kellogg. Can you please come up to that microphone?
Should I speak without the microphone? Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, but we have a video recording.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you can turn that around, Ian.
You have 20 minutes, starting now.
Is this better? This is for the news service provided by ITS called the Book Exchange. All students with Friends of Penn State's accounts or Access accounts will be able to access this starting this November, actually. When you first come into the Book Exchange, just a brief explanation of what this is and what this isn't. This is not something for you to get money directly from. You can sell books or trade books, but we will not process or ship your books. Keep that in mind, please. Starting out from here, most people will probably go see what they have to know. We've been testing this for quite a while, so you can kind of see some of the stuff we've been doing. Every person, when they come into their profile, will have their name, where they're located at, since this is designed to interface students with each other at their campus. Your location is shown. This is where you'll sell books. This is where you will primarily buy books. You can change where you shop, but primarily this is where you'll be. Your email will always be your Penn State email. You cannot change this. This is policy by Penn State. And you have your phone number, which can be changed, and it's up to you if you even want people to use it. I don't like people using it, so I have this contact method set to email. If you don't want people emailing them and you rather have phone conversation, click phone. If you want both or you don't care, it's both. To change your phone number, we did provide this link over here. Gives a little bit of how to do it, but you guys are familiar with work.psu.edu. You can come in here, right in the middle of the bottom, add or change other directory information. It's all the way at the bottom. The permanent phone number, that's where you can change that at. So once you're on this page, this is where you've created a listing for a book. If you decided to cancel a listing, if someone bought your book, it shows up here. If you go to buy someone's book, again, it shows up here. Brief description of that particular book. The condition of it that you set when you started putting it up. And then this is how many times someone's offered it. You have up to 25. After 25, it's automatically taken down, but you can always reset that and get an additional 25. So if you click on one of this, it shows information, more detailed information about this. I canceled this book, so you can always come in and renew it. Now you can edit information about books that you've previously posted. More or less, you don't need it. So I can change this. Asking price. There is no limit to the asking price. You can set it to 0, which just shows up as price not listed, and you can go to any number you'd like. There is this thing called price not negotiable. It's a little check box. It just lets people know when they're looking that you don't want to barter for a price at all. This page is how you sell books. It's kind of like Amazon and most other websites where you enter in ISBN numbers. They're commonly found in the back of the book above the barcode. You can enter up to 25 at once. And the only issue with this page is if you have a Friends of Penn State account, you're not allowed accessing this. This is a security risk because anyone can create a Friends of Penn State account. So only Penn State students with Access accounts can sell their books. Once you enter in your book, the book numbers, you're greeted with this page, which again gives a little bit of detail, more about the book. You can come in, set the condition, the price. For some reason we'll sell this for $80. Description. And sell this is pretty self-explanatory. If you really don't want to sell this, click no. Sell the books. Shows up in your profile that you created this listing and whatnot. Most of this website will probably be done here in the search. Searching is pretty easy. You just type in either the number or the title and author, limited by the lowest condition that you would like. So if I pick good, it will only show me conditions that are new, excellent, or good. Set your range. And your campus is default to the one that's in your profile. But for whatever reason, if you're moving, you know you're moving, maybe it's easier for you to look at that particular campus you're going to go to. There's this quick search at the top on every page. It's basically the same thing as this, except for it does all of them at once. It's pretty inaccurate, but if you're doing like, if you know the title or the ISBN number, it's probably the best way to go. So here's many books that have been put up over all these meetings and testing. Let's do highest price, best condition, or lowest condition. You can, this is one that I just put up. You can also look for your own books. It kind of shows you what your position is in terms of your price compared to other users. Well, let's say I want this book. So here's someone who doesn't have a campus listing. If they don't have a campus listing that's a faculty or anyone with a confidentiality hold, they're automatically put into all results so that they have a fair chance of selling their book. When you come in, you can see information about them, when the book was up, how many times someone's tried to buy the book. If, like 24 offers and the book's still up here, they probably sold it, so just letting you know. You can come in, click this. You can send a message to the seller if you would like. You don't have to. Just send an email to them to let them know that you're interested and they can contact you. If they did not have the email there and they only had their phone, this wouldn't show up and you would just have their phone number listed where their email would be. More or less that is the entire thing. It's pretty simple. It's just trying to get a listing like Craigslist so people can sell their books, try to get more money than what they'd probably get going to downtown or the bookstore. That's its whole idea. If there's any questions or comments, I would like to answer that.
Questions? Representative Sanders.
I know that the Penn State, or the eline.com or whatever, the Penn State Eline source, just had Penn State Bookstore kind of like list the books for each class. Is there any like plans for that, like doing that on this website so you don't have to like go find it?
Yeah, there's still talks about that. Nothing's been directly brought up about it. It's something we're trying to work on. There's still a little bit of a fight between the bookstore and this project. And Eline is completely separate from my department, so we don't have direct access to that. But it is something we're trying to bring.
Sorry, the other question I have is I just want to confirm only Penn State people, like not friends with Penn State, can buy or sell books on this?
Friends of Penn State can buy books, but they can't sell. That's their only restriction. But Access account has no restrictions. They can do whatever they like.
Other questions? Mr. Crivello?
I just wanted to thank Ian for coming. He's really been the spearhead, of course, programming this, and just to kind of remind the Assembly, I know this is talked about in almost every week, some comment to the Student Book Exchange, but just briefly preface, Ian was recommended, his father obviously is in charge of Student Affairs IT, and of course he's an engineer and excels at this sort of stuff. He was selected over the summer by the steering committee to really, I guess, put the ideas of the Student Book Exchange, which were being circulated in faculty senate, et cetera, by UPUA and Academic Affairs Committee last year into practice. And I think this is a great first working model, and I think it will really serve the students very well. So I just wanted to say thank you, and thank you for running through. briefly, all representatives were given access to this, or given the website, and now you've kind of seen all the details of it. So if you have questions, ask Ian now, and if you have comments later, is it okay for them to email you?
Yeah, if they don't want to remember my ID, which is IDK1, I did pull an alias book exchange at psu.edu. Feel free to email me questions and comments, or even feedback and maybe features you would like to add for the next version. This is, again, coming in November, as is, not much modification here, but hopefully another version will be on its way.
You can also send recommendations to Matt Smith, the Academy Affairs Committee, as they're going to serve as kind of the annual or biannual kind of student focus committee to focus ideas and give them Student Affairs IT to maintain this website in the future.
Other questions? Representative Karasik?
What steps are going to be taken to make the student population in general aware of this new feature, aware of the exchange, and to teach them how to use it? I mean, you came to the meeting and taught us how to use it, but...
There is, right now it actually be put into the help desk. There is going to be a help desk article on this. There is talks between UP-UA about advertising this to the general public. At the meeting yesterday that I was at, everyone talked about how we could send email to their listservs and we could contact all of the students across all the campuses as a way to get this out. I guess Ralph had some ideas on how to announce this as well, so hopefully that works well.
Representative Miller?
I don't know if this is a question better answered by Ralph or Matt or you, but I was just curious if this is the position, your position that we want a student to stay in, and what year are you?
I'm only a sophomore.
In the future, are you gonna have younger students under you who can take up this position, or that's something we're planning on or talking about?
Well, probably not. The full-time staff in AIT group are going to own this. They're going to maintain it in the future, maybe hire other students to maybe bring features, but more or less full-time staff is going to take control of it to keep it alive.
Representative Malloy?
Yeah, real quick, is there like a rating of like the students, like if you, like on eBay, you rate the people, like the exchange, like if I call over winter break, hey, you're gonna give me that science book, right? Yeah, and then like totally cruise you over and you get back to campus.
Yeah, that was the original idea, but it came down to it was not reliable enough for students to just leave feedback of other students and tarnishing them for no reason. I mean, at least with eBay, they know that you bought this item and they can guarantee that you bought this item. We don't have a way to do that.
Okay.
So
I see where you're going.
maybe in the future, still on the future list of possible future options, but currently right now, it's not an option.
Thank you.
Other questions? Representative Sanders?
Is there gonna be like a help button or some sort of like tutorial button or anything like that?
There's a help desk article on the way. I can put a link on the site when that's finished, and that's probably not going to be finished for another 2 weeks or so, but more or less in time for the launch.
Other questions? I have a question. How do you compile the list of books? Is that just by the users putting them up, or are you going to make a comprehensive list based on what's available in the bookstores downtown and on campus?
Well, right now, it's only books that students are entering. There's the possibility in the future of maybe a partnership with the bookstore or any of the downtown to put their own books listed here, but right now that's not an option. So it's only books that are listed by Penn State students that showed up.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks very much. Okay, moving on to our second presentation by the Associate Vice President of Student Affairs, Dr. Burlingame.
Should I use this mic?
Yes.
There's one up here too, Doctor, if you want to come with the...
Sorry to have my back. Good evening, and I want to also congratulate Ian for that presentation. And just to clarify, this project will be supported, I think, by Penn State's ITS, Information Technology Service, not the Student Affairs Division's IT department. So the help desk for the university will be available to help any of you or other students have questions about that site. I mention that because that's one of the departments that I work with in student affairs, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about that. First, I want to thank Ralph Crivello for inviting me to come tonight. I'm sorry to hear Gavin is not well. Gavin invited me to come to the Association of Big Ten Students meeting on August 15th, and it was really nice to see that Penn State hosted that meeting here. And it was interesting for me as a student affairs person just to hear some of the issues that were being talked about by student leaders like yourselves who came from other universities across the United States. Gavin asked me to speak just very briefly, and I know you have a huge agenda tonight, so I'll try to move through this quickly, but he asked me to talk just briefly about my role in student affairs. And I can tell you that I work with 7 departments. I think 3 of them you're probably familiar with. My role in working with these departments is significantly less important than the directors who lead those departments, so I want to make that really clear. I'm honored to work with the folks who I do work with in student affairs, and I'm honored to be associated with them. The 7 departments are Career Services, the Counseling and Psychological Services Center, University Health Services, our Student Affairs Research and Assessment Office, our Financial Office, Student Affairs Human Resources, and Student Affairs Information Technology. I thought I would just highlight a few things from, in particular, these large service departments, because though you interface with all of them, it may surprise you to know the impact, I think, that these departments have on so many students, almost all students at Penn State. Oftentimes, the folks that you interact with in student affairs are working in the student activities area or working in other areas that are really important, but I appreciate the opportunity tonight to come and just talk about some of the other really critical work that's being done every day by student affairs staff. First, I'll mention Career Services. This is an office that's led by Dr. Jack Raymond. He's one of, if not the most highly respected career services administrator in the country. You've probably seen the new building. It's just a few years old now. It's the Bank of America Career Services building. If you haven't been in there, it is not a bank. It's actually a place where each of you should take some time and go and talk with one of our career counselors about some of your interests, begin to think about, no matter what year you're in, summer work, internships, co-op experiences, or if you're a junior or senior, about employment. This year, the Career Services folks put together what was the largest career fair in Penn State's history. We had a few more than 600 employers who came to meet with students over the 3-day period. We had 9,000 students who attended and several thousand more who came and took advantage of interviews. So you need to know that this is perhaps the largest career fair in the United States. And in the spring, if you haven't been to a career fair yet, I would encourage you to get that on your schedule. You can find the dates for a variety of events, including several career fairs that are being scheduled, and get those on your calendar. For those of you who are upper class students who are interested in graduate school, Career Services will help you with test taking skills for the LSAT, the MCAT, GREs, or the GMAT exams. I do know that Bob Orndorff from our Career Services Department came recently, right, and talked about some other services that are offered there. I just want to mention, last year, for example, we had 13,000 student interviews conducted through the Career Center with 450 employers who came to campus outside the career fair times. We had over 10,000 career counseling appointments, and that's a service that is something you should really take advantage of, and take some time to really clarify how you're going to present and market your employment skills. I mean, especially for each of you, because you're all student government leaders who have lots of great things to say that go beyond what's going to be on your transcript and really what might appear on the surface on your resume. Also, the Career Services folks publish an undergraduate and a graduate student guide, and I would encourage you to get a copy of that. A lot of our graduate students don't realize that they are every bit as welcomed to take advantage of our career services as undergraduate students. Second department is the Counseling and Psychological Services Center. You may know that we've just opened a new facility. a lot of students still refer to both our psychological counseling department and our university health services as written hour, which I think over time is going to get confusing when new students start going to the old written hour building for services and find out they're some distance away from where those facilities actually are. But there is a beautiful new student health center building. Gavin was one of the featured speakers at the grand opening of that building, and I know the director of the health center, Dr. Peg Spear, gave him a personal tour of the facility, and he maybe spoke about that or mentioned that at a previous meeting. Well, the folks that we have in CAPS are just a superb group. We have 18 psychologists, we have a psychiatrist on staff, and a psychiatric nurse practitioner. So I think it's helpful for you to know that essentially no matter what kind of problem that our students are dealing with, and many of you know that students come today with a really wide array, and some with really serious psychological issues that they're trying to sort out in addition to going through the rigors of attending Penn State. Just last year, for example, the CAP staff saw 12,690 appointments for counseling and psychiatric clinical treatment. So that gives you some idea that this is not a small issue. There are lots of our fellow students here that are in need, and we're happy that we're able to provide some of those services. We also have a large number of psychotherapy groups. At Penn State, we have 46 groups that meet generally throughout the year. This is probably the university with the largest number of psychotherapy groups in place. When our students started coming to the new building this fall, they were greeted with a new, I think, very efficient electronic check-in procedure. All of the paper files of CAPS that have been used for clinical treatment of students are now electronic, so a lot of advancement of technology within that department. There's also something going on that I just wanted to mention. I think it's very interesting. Several of our psychologists are leading a national effort, and they've established the Center for the Study of College Student Mental Health here at Penn State in our CAPS program. They've built a consortium of now over 150 other colleges and universities that are sharing the similar kind of clinical treatment software and information about the treatment of students, not personal information that's identifiable about students, but treatment modalities are being shared. And over the next couple of years, I think we're going to see some extraordinary new findings that will come out that will revolutionize the way that treatment is being done and provide us with the largest research study ever on what are the most effective ways to assist students who present with very serious problems at college health centers. And I'm really proud that Penn State is leading that, and our assistant director, Dr. Ben Locke, is the architect of that whole research project. I mentioned University Health Services and Dr. Peg Spear. She's creating a new campus health and well-being advisory board. If any of you as student leaders have any interest in the health-related professions and would be interested in that advisory board, I know she would love to tell you more about that and invite you to get involved. I'm just going to say a couple of more things here about UHS. Last year there were 74,500 student visits, and that was at the old facility in Rittenhour. So if you think about that, that rate is dramatically on the rise for the first 2 months of this semester, in large part because of the new building. I hope you know that UHS, though it's not open in the evenings, does have an advice nurse service. So if you ever, right now a lot of students are out ill, if you ever encounter a student who has some questions about their health late in the evening or on weekends, they can go on the UHS website, call that advice nurse free of charge, and that's available 24 hours a day. And that is a really heavily used service. Last year, 21,400 students called and got advice, so that's something that a lot of your fellow students are utilizing. Pharmacy, the University Health Services operates a very large pharmacy. We had 58,309 students who came to that pharmacy last year. In the new building, that number I think is going to go up somewhat. We also run an ambulance service for the university. Over 1,100 students were transported to either our local hospital or other regional hospitals last year. And in total, there were 194,500 student contacts throughout just university health services. So I know these are a lot of numbers, but I'm just trying to give you some sense of the large-scale scope of these services that are available here. I won't talk about the Research and Assessment Office because I understand that Dr. Andrea Dowhauer is going to be talking to UPUA later this semester, and I'm sure she'll talk more about that. There are just 3 other things I wanted to quickly mention. One is just some thoughts on the importance of advising student organizations. I've been here at Penn State for about 10 years. I currently advise several groups, and I've always advised student organizations throughout my entire career. Until last year, I advised the Graduate Student Association. Currently, I advise a group called Alpha Phi Omega. It's a co-ed service fraternity. It's been at Penn State for 76 years. There's a tremendous amount of history associated with that group. During World War II, for example, back then it was all men during World War II, and of course most of those men volunteered for service. So for a couple of years the group was not very active, but it's throughout most of its history been active every year. There's another group called the Council of Lionhearts, and that's the presidents of Penn State's community service organization. That group meets every Friday. I work with that group also as an advisor. And they've created a website that I wanted to tell you about. It's called volunteer.psu.edu. It's a clearinghouse. It's a place where those groups can post service projects, and human service agencies downtown can post projects, and all Penn State students are invited to utilize that site just to connect their interest in doing service with things that need to be done in our community. That you asked about the book, how will the book program be launched, and I can tell you the volunteer site is going to be marketed over the next couple of months under the tagline of "Do Good, Start Here." And when you see that and you see the URL, I invite you to look at that website. The entire website was written by a former student who just graduated last year named Walter Weiss. He was an IST major. He wrote this entire really website to serve the needs of our student organizations at no cost. He volunteered to do that. It was just a great thing to see. He now works for the U.S. State Department, and he's continuing to volunteer to maintain that site and help us out. So I think it's just a great example of how students, like you all do, reach out and go above and beyond to give back to the university. The final thing, well, along with the Council of Lionhearts, I did want to acknowledge and thank Samantha Miller, your Director of Governmental Affairs. She came to a Council of Lionhearts meeting this fall and talked to the student leaders about the Service Nation Summit and that whole initiative. I understand that there was a resolution passed with UPUA supporting that notion, and I certainly, as a member of the administration at Penn State, support Penn State's affiliation with Service Nation. You probably know this, but by 2020, the goal is that 100 million citizens will volunteer time in schools and workplaces and faith-based community institutions each year. I think this is a great goal. I was really pleased to watch the Service Nation Forum when both of our presidential candidates talked about the importance of finding a cause that's greater than yourself, and certainly serving others who are less fortunate is if not one of the most noble things to do, then I don't know what it is. Last thing I want to say is just to talk about civic engagement. You are all here as UPUA leaders. I really commend that. I thank you on behalf of the rest of the folks I work with in Student Affairs for all the time that you put in to try to make Penn State a better place. I chair the university committee that oversees the student newspaper readership program. So I hope that all of you, when you find time, do pick up newspapers from that program. Encourage other students to do so. We have an election next month, November 4th. I hope that you will encourage those who have registered to vote on that day and that you'll make time in your schedule to vote. I just think that's all really important. And civic engagement is something that, obviously like volunteer service, if it's developed and practiced while you're in this time of learning in college, is something that you'll likely continue to do. Just one last personal note. A few times each year, I work with some other musicians and volunteer to play one of the noontime concert series. So a group that I play in, a quintet, a jazz quintet, is playing October 24th at noon. So if any of you have any interest in jazz, I'd invite you to stop by on the mezzanine when you're having lunch and just give our group a listen. So with that, I thank you very much again for inviting me, and if you have time, I'll be happy to take questions.
Are there questions? Mr. Gavello?
I actually have a few questions. The pharmacy and the student health center, why does the university not participate in any HMO coverage or an HMO plan or policy to help aid students in covering that cost? And kind of going on that, I was just wondering if you could explain what the Student Health Advisory Board is, what its role and functions, and what is it?
Sure. Well, first, as to why the university doesn't participate in an HMO, you're talking about group coverage for all students?
Or, a lot of students from Pittsburgh, a lot of people have like UPMC or other, students have various parental or otherwise HMO. I know the university offers some sort of student health plan, but why doesn't the university or the university health service, just like a private doctors, affiliate with HMO coverage?
Yeah, well, the short answer is that certainly has been analyzed, and it's been determined that it would be actually more expensive for the university to get engaged in what you're talking about is really third-party billing, to bill, a third party for that coverage. But that's an issue that I think is under, continual review and discussion and conversation. No doubt about it, the staff there is interested in providing the lowest cost health service that can be. I think you'll find the cost of the health visits is lower than what an HMO would provide, not. Of course, the other issue is not all students have that kind of HMO coverage. So, I certainly understand the issue that you have, and it's something that is not ever off the table, I don't think. Second question was the Student Health Advisory Board is really there to work with the staff directly in helping to evaluate the kinds of services that are offered, student perceptions about those services. There's a lot of energy in the new building to try to be much more efficient. Just one quick thing I'll tell you is with the new facility, there is now a protocol for the physicians and the physician assistants, the nurse practitioners, to really be able to meet to have several students at the same time coming in, going into multiple exam rooms, like you would, your family medical practice probably see a physician, and while you're seeing the nurse getting ready for your appointment, the physician is, also seeing another person and coming in right away to see you. So the idea is to reduce the wait time and to make those visits much more efficient.
Any other questions? Representative Miller?
I was curious what the billing policy is in UHS for a full-time Penn State student who might stay up over the course of the summer but not be enrolled in classes for either of the summer sessions. Do they pay the student rate or do they pay a non-student rate because they're not currently enrolled in classes?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I will make note of it and I will email you, Samantha, and we'll make sure that you get the answer to bring that back to the UPUA.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions? Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our last special presentation, we have Mr. Jordan Ford here from the Office of Annual Giving.
Answer some of your questions you have. I know you're all probably chomping at the bit to ask me lots of questions, so I'll be brief. My name is Jordan Ford. I am an assistant director in the Office of Annual Giving. Part of what I'm charged with is advising undergraduate student groups who essentially educate our student base about philanthropy at Penn State, how they can get involved, how they benefit from it, such as the Student Philanthropy Council and the Senior Class Gift Program, which is why I'm here. Over the summer, and I'm not going to bore you to death by giving you the summary that I feel like all you have, but just to explain some of the details. The class of 1900 actually gave 50 of the pink wood and concrete benches you might have seen all over campus over your 2, 3, 4 years here. Those gifts over time, I think they were put in 1945 and 1946 as a reunion gift. That was pretty typical of the kind of earlier senior class gifts as you go back over like the late 1800s, early 1900s. Is a lot of the classes would leave that as a 50-year, 30-year reunion gift. Hence the case with the class of 1900. Those 50 benches were put up all over campus over time, just like the wear and tear of wood being outside, people jumping up and down on them, not constant, but there was maybe once a decade, as it was explained to me, replacement of the wood, replacement of the concrete. I'm not sure how close of an eye you guys have on the concrete supports. Some of them are stamped with the class of 1900, others are clear of that. The ones that are clear of that were replacement of the concrete, either has been cracked over time or the wood was splintering, things like that. Obviously, our office, along with the Office of Physical Plant, is charged with upkeeping those gifts, maintaining the integrity, and also maintaining the legacy. On a personal note, I'm very, very inclined to maintain the legacy of class gifts. I served as the class gift chair in 2007 during my senior year, so it obviously is something that's very important to me as well. I was contacted in probably like late May, early June by some of the administrators over in the Office of Physical Plant. They contacted me, and of the benches we're speaking about, essentially the 9 that remained on the Allen Street and Henderson Mall, which you're all familiar with. Essentially saying that some of these benches are going to need to be removed where the, I don't know what the technical term is, but where the brackets are going into the concrete, starting to splinter the wood, the concrete's beginning to crack. It's just not constant, but it's kind of taking this continuous monitoring, this care, and as I'll explain maybe a little bit in the future, is the senior class gifts are essentially built with one-time money. We fundraise from the seniors for a specific gift that they vote on in November 3rd through 7th, if you happen to be voting this week, I'll put out a plug for it. But a lot of these gifts don't come with maintenance endowments, such as the fish tanks. The class of 1999 gave those. A lot of the problems that they run into, Beverly College of Science was nice enough to give us a $5,000 grant to help maintain that life. Once the money's spent, it's not really regenerating itself. So that's part of the issue here, and also just they said, you know what, it's time to take the next step. They approached our office and myself, my supervisor, and our director, essentially my bosses. We talked it over, and I, again, like I said, having a soft spot in my heart for this, said, well, I just don't want to tear up the benches. We don't want to just tear up the benches. We want to find some way to memorialize these gifts. Some senior class gifts that contain things like technology. I know in the old Career Services Center, I think in 88, 89, there was a gift to provide interview technology and things like that. It becomes obsolete pretty quick. There's not an easy way to memorialize gifts like that. Gifts that revolve around buildings that might be restructured, that might be transformed. It's hard to always keep a grasp on that, but I felt with something, and we felt as an office and through the physical plan, we could find a way to do that. The 9 gifts in question, we pretty much came up with the idea, OPP relaying it to myself and my bosses, and myself, since it was summer, relaying it via email and phone calls to our student committee, who obviously Liz represents, and we have 5 other senior members, pretty much stating they're going to remove the benches, replace them with the more consistent black steel iron bench that you see across campus, and find a way to memorialize them the way we thought was either having a stone with a plaque on it, similar to like the way the honor code is, or the old May 1915 class gift, which like, you've probably never seen it because it's real tucked away in the corner. But we thought, well, depending on how many benches we can kind of make a composite of with good materials and still keep the lifeblood of this gift together, we can put a plaque on the bench, and that's essentially what we're doing. We originally thought the estimate from OPP was we could probably get 2. Turns out we can get 5. So all in all, from the 50 benches over time that were removed down to about 9, there are 1 or 2 around campus. I haven't actually gone out on a scavenger hunt and found them all quite yet, but the 9 that were remaining on the mall, essentially a reduction of 4 of them, down to the 5. OPP is working very swiftly. They were building around, I'm not sure how much you saw, but the old wooden posts that were lining the mall to keep the bikers off and things like that, those were being replaced with a steel or some sort of metal post, so they were waiting essentially for those to go up before they poured the concrete, at least along the Allen Street Mall. So that is essentially where all that came from. I know you guys have a lot of questions. I'm more than happy to answer anything, and I know I only have 15 minutes, but I know Ralph and Sam and Nick have my email. If you have any follow-up questions that we can't answer today, I'm more than happy to answer them. And as well, we'll pass along Liz's information as well. But I guess that's...
Questions? I cannot believe if you do not have questions. Representative Smith.
Good evening. Matt Smith, Academic Affairs Chairman. I've been heavily involved in some of the work here at UPOA regarding class gifts. And I was wondering, because class gifts, as I understand it, are essentially a means for the university to instill philanthropy from students from their senior year onward to generate monies back to the university over time. These are based off of open presentations available on the Office of Annual Giving's website, so on and so forth. But what is to prevent, 100 years from now, with no one to speak for me, my class gift, if it doesn't turn out to be as iconic as the Lion Shrine, or Old Main, or the Old Main clock, or the murals, from being destroyed? Because those, are we saying that there's a tiered system? Are they just better class gifts? Is that why they're not allowed to be destroyed?
No, I mean, no. I think obviously if you get into a sensitive area like a line, I mean, to some extent, there is a tiered system. We don't approach it like that. We don't sit there at our meetings and rank them. Before I get to any of that, I want to applaud your education. I'm so happy that people have taken an interest in the senior class gift, and knowing that, yes, we like to leave monuments and legacies and physical reminders on campus now. Obviously, physical gifts and non-physical gifts like scholarships and endowments are all part of the class gift program. But really, we're trying to educate students about future gifts so they can provide future scholarship support, facility support, faculty support. It's pretty much the approach. Do I think we'd ever remove the Lion Shrine? No. When there's growing orange paint on it, when there's, when you look around and the fence is kind of falling apart and the landscapes, to be honest, it's not a very pretty landscape behind the Lion Shrine. Would there be changes to that? Possibly. I don't think they would just tear down the Lion Shrine and say, oh, everything's different. Like I explained with the fish tanks, there might not be new money for these. To be honest, 100 years from now, who knows what the campus is going to look like? Who knows how these things are going to change? I will tell you the trend across universities nationwide and probably worldwide is to move strictly to essentially scholarship support. I know myself, it was kind of talked about when I was the chairperson here. I fought very hard, and I'm continuing to fight hard to keep it open to the students to be able to submit gifts, be able to vote on their gifts, and kind of as a senior rite of passage, to be able to have that voice and say, this is what, symbolizes our time here in Penn State. In terms of a tiered system, I can't really say that one gift is more important than the others. I obviously hold a soft spot for my gift for things like the Lion Shrine that are very iconic in Penn State. You mentioned the murals, the fish tank, Old Main clock on those stumps. I go on for days about how important they are, but the class of 1938 gave an ambulance to Red Howard. That's what you kind of know when giving that, it's not going to be around forever. I know my class 2007, we gave the celebration guard recently completed outside of Rec Hall. Rec Hall's an 81-year-old building. It might not be there forever. There might be changes, there might be things that go around. The pipes underneath it, we had enough of a problem with that it's very old. If they need to tear things up, if they need to change it to get under there, those are things we're not really, I don't want to say we're not prepared for them, but there's no way for us to prepare for them. Who knows how Penn State's going to change? We kind of always have to roll with the punches with these things. But like I said, with trying to memorialize these gifts, we always do our best. That's our job as fundraisers, is not just to get the money, but to be good stewards of the money and the gifts. So.
Other questions? Representative Leonard?
I do have a question. First, I just want to preface it by saying, when the seniors bestow a gift upon the university, it's not necessarily for the university, but it's for the students that will use it. And I guess my question is, why weren't students consulted before changes were made regarding the 1900 class gift?
Well, I'll come back at that and say, it is for the university, it's for the students, it's for future students, it's for alumni, it's for people passing through. Not only, I'll say this, not only students have gained some sort of good moment from the Lion Shrine or walking out in front of Old Main and hearing the Westminster chimes, anything like that. I completely agree that's a very big part of it, which is why I'm fighting very hard to keep those options open, the voting options, the submission for the students. In terms of consulting the students, as far as I would say I'm concerned, and maybe this is me being naive, I feel that in our terms, our students were consulted. We worked with the students in the Senior Class Gift Committee who represent this program, who know this program better than anyone else on campus, who, before they do any type of fundraising, sit down with me and learn the ins and outs of this program. We have all the resources online. I'm not sure how much research you guys have done on this, but I recently just completed the detailed history of senior class gifts, to have a resource for people to go back there and say, look what's been done in the past, to give people, start generating ideas for when they're trying to submit a gift, or what would be a cool legacy to leave on campus, or is it time to, really, financial aid isn't what it should be. We should be responsible and give a scholarship. And I'll preface that by saying, if you don't like your gift, you can give to anywhere on campus. Any allocation, you give to UPUA. That's absolutely fine by us. I'll say. But as far as we're concerned, we consulted the students that we needed to consult with. I understand UPUA is the voice of the students, but in my emails back and forth, I've kind of tried to reiterate that we're a little bit of a technicality because we don't operate under student affairs. We're not really a student organization. We operate under the Office of Annual Giving with a very specific mission of furthering the office's mission, which is educating undergraduate students so in the future they'll become annual donors. When you guys all become rich and famous, and when I become rich and famous, I'll have lots of money to give back to Penn State to pay them back for all the good times and all the philanthropic endeavors that I benefited from. So I think, from what I understand, that's kind of where the fundamental disagreement is on all this. Did I answer your question? I think?
In a way.
In a way.
Do you have a follow-up?
Probably
Okay. Representative Karasek?
My issue with it is simply the fact that a class gives a gift in order to memorialize and stamp their presence here in the university. And the issue here is that that presence has now been virtually wiped off the face of this university. And so, and if not totally wiped off, it has been diminished. And so, by the destruction of those benches. Or at least that was the message that was sent. So my question is, actually, well, I'll follow up after this, but my first question is, was anyone in the Alumni Association or anything like that, I would assume that we don't have any alumni from the class of 1900 still with us, but was anyone from the Alumni Association consulted on the destruction of these benches?
No, part of it is because the senior class gift program, although it is the Division of Development and Alumni Relations, senior class gift is a development, which is a fancy term for fundraising. It's a development program. It's not an alumni association program. We essentially have, again, not only the authority, but also the responsibility to be good stewards of these gifts, to maintain the integrity. I think if we look at it, I know with some of the emails I saw going back and forth, people saying, I would be upset if my gift wasn't around in 108 years. I think we need to take a little perspective and say 108 years is a really long time, and even though it was about 56, 57 years, I'm not blanking on math, but for wood to be outside, at least in this particular instance, it kind of helps to take a step back and use that perspective. In terms of the Alumni Association being involved, again, I don't want to say it doesn't have anything to do with them, but like you said, there were no representatives from the class of 1900 available to go and talk to. Back on the campus, obviously the university or the college was a lot different. But that's our job, again, as fundraisers, as stewards, to represent those students who are, or those alumni that are no longer around.
Mr. Gabello?
I ask unanimous consent to extend, if Jordan doesn't mind staying for a little while, questions for an extra 10 minutes.
Any objections? Extra 10 minutes? Allotted.
And I have a question. First of all, I would like to thank you for coming. I'd like to thank you for coming tonight and taking some tough questions and really showing a willingness to interact and that sort of. But my question really has to, I think, with the crux of what has been asked, kind of a summary. I mean, you definitely, as an individual and as a group, committee as well, did take some time trying to think of how best to memorialize this, and given the circumstance of OPP wanting to remove them because there was a physical problem with it. I think what was most concerning to students is that no one seemed to know except your office, the student committee, the members thereof, and OPP, and people one day walked back past it and said, where did this go? Where did this, that I sat on, etc., where did these things go? And there was really no forewarning, no publicity, and then it looked like there was no input, besides maybe the student committee, which we really did not know until we started engaging you. So the average student, it just disappeared. I think that's where a lot of sentiment, why a lot of members here feel very passionately because students have contacted them. So my question to you is, looking forward and kind of dealing with what's before this body now, how do you envision or can you see a way to try and inform UPUA and provide counsel and input moving forward to make sure that students, not just the student committee, which you guys work on the details of it, which you should, but in a more general sense, so the average student doesn't walk past and say, oh, this gift just vanished. That sort of.
Yeah, that was a tough question. Multi-answer, because there was a lot of information there. In terms of communicating it, one, I mean, this was a decision that was made over the summer. There wasn't really a precedent for this. Obviously, you look at things when the new cream beer came around, the class gifts of 1990 and 1991. Again, we don't have new money to go and remake those plazas and reconstruct all what's been done over there. There's only so much that can be done in situations like that. In terms of being able to communicate it, obviously, the Collegian and I guess the newswires are probably the main sources of information. Sending emails out from our office costs money. We do it to the seniors. We do a senior class gift email once a month. But still, even that's not that effective. I've explained through the emails, as much as I would love to as a communications major, we don't control the media. We can't say, hey, Collegian, this is a great, but we can't say this is a great story. We have senior class gift voting week out there, changes being made, this, that, or the other thing. But we don't control that. And same thing with the newswire. We do have a very good relationship with the Office of University Relations that put those out. But again, we can't say for 100% certainty that we can. Obviously, in the future, this wasn't. And again, I think I've explained this to the emails. I think the initial reaction to this was somewhat aggressive in the resolution that we destroyed it without any student input, and OPP just threw caution to the wind and said, forget about the class of 1900. It's time for change. This was a well-discussed decision between our office and the Office of OPP and our class gift committee for 2009. But from this point forward, by all means, I'll put everything out there I can about any changes to class gifts. I'm going to be honest, not all of it's newsworthy. But we can do what we can to get that information out there. And any help that you guys can give us, by all means, we're welcome to it. So.
Representative Lurch.
Thanks for joining tonight. This may be a different perspective. I'm a third generation Penn State student. My mom graduated from here, her dad graduated from here. I talked to both of them, I said, hey, do you remember the benches? They both, remembered. They were also both very upset, why, again, the whole, we didn't know about that, why did this happen? And you said the whole point of your organization is to try to get people to give back to the university. Well, both, my mother and my grandfather give money, annual donations to the university, but now are very upset, questioning, okay, we give all this money to the university, yet they don't, inform us, we go back, see some of those things, even at the benches, those are memories I had, I sat on those benches on the way back from class, I had a day where, it's the little things, they can, mean sentimental value. When something like that is torn away from a alum, especially at a university, it means a lot to a lot of people. I mean, when people graduate from here, they keep coming back because it's something special to them. What makes it that, one of these, right now, this is small, but something down the road might not be taken away and approached in the right situation and hamper your, your actual organization in getting those funds, because I know, alumni, if they are upset, they may stop giving, and that would even hurt the university further. So just.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think my answer, this might be generic, is but you can't please all people all the time. I know that sounds very harsh, but I work upstairs from our telephone operation line. They're getting on the phone with, donors, probably like your mom and dad every day. They don't like Joe Pa, they don't like President Spanier. We're spending too much money on new buildings. Some people love the direction Penn State's going. Some people hate it. They don't think the administration's doing what they should. They think too much emphasis is put on sports or dance marathon. Obviously dance marathon is what it is. But they say, well, all these students are going out and fundraising for one specific cause, and they forget about everything else. What about this? What about that? What about these programs that are completely underfunded? What about minority students? There's a million different problems. I'll be honest, we take a look, we take the perspective of it we try and be the best stewards we can be. Again, why we try to memorialize the gifts the best way we could. We, again, reduce the benches by 9 to 5, excuse me. For everybody, like your mom and dad, who probably, I'm a third generation Penn Stater too. My dad, or my grandfather, has a building on campus named after him. I have tremendous pride for this university. I would give any, and I have done everything I can to stay here and give everything I can back to the university and really represent what's good about this place. But for every person like your mom and dad, there's probably another two people like somebody else's mom and dad that are saying, and those benches were old, they were falling apart. I hated seeing those ugly pink things on campus. And that's kind of the, it's not a great perspective, but it's one of those things where if it's a safety hazard, if they're falling apart, if it's just time, again, we're not talking about the Lion Shrine, I don't want to say they're tiered, but we're not talking about the Lion Shrine, the sundial, ripping the Westminster chimes out of Old Main Tower. But if a bench on campus is falling apart, OPP is going to say, this is a safety hazard, or these are in general disrepair, we're spending too much time focusing on these things, we should be doing other things, there's no new money. It's kind of like a necessary evil. I think the one quote they got right in the Collegian article when this first came out was that it's unfortunate, but it's necessary. And we kind of have to, as an office, we have to roll with those punches. And we have to deal with that. But again, it all comes back to being good stewards. And it's very unfortunate that these benches had to be removed or reduced, but we're doing what we can to preserve the legacy of the gift, to preserve the history of the gift. And I think we've done a pretty good job at doing that. So, did that answer your question, or is there?
Other questions? Representative Mance.
Hi, Jordan. Could you explain to some of us how right now there's no type of like a committee or forum to get like opinions on when class gifts do need like maintenance and repairs to them? Do you think it would be a good idea, or do you have any plans so that to get any type of a committee or a forum together where it could be comprised of students, administrators, or people from class committees, or to help some of these differences?
No, there's not really a standing committee. This occurrence is very rare. When it does come up, we kind of assess it, obviously, over the summer, where we kind of approach it as, communicate it to the students. If something needs to be done, again, not to say they're tiered, but if we know it's an iconic Penn State symbol, we're gonna rip up the Lion Shrine or something like that, I don't think we'd ever do that because it's what could ever happen to it, but it's very fluid, frankly. Again, as serving on this committee, I'm very passionate that these are the students we want to consult with. Not to take anything away from what you guys do. I was a student when you guys were around, when you guys were getting formed, going through everything that you guys went to get to where you are. I definitely appreciate that. And working with students, they appreciate it too. I know you guys have like 3-4 hour meetings every week. That's incredible. I couldn't do that. So we definitely appreciate that. But I almost feel like some of that is trying to be usurped from the students who are committing themselves to this program, that are taking the time and the effort to do that, with a very specific focus of what can we do if things need to change to preserve the history, to preserve the legacy, and the thoughts and goodwill that went into giving money to create these gifts, frankly. In regards to the resolution, which more or less calls for us to come consult with you, on a personal level, yeah, that's fine. On a professional level, that's fine too. I know OPP in my office, I think we were all very off-put by the word destroyed, and that there was destruction of the class gifts, that it was so careless and very danger in the night type, where we snuck up and just ruined Penn State's history. And I think that paints us in a bad light when we're doing everything we can to memorialize these gifts every which way we can. And obviously, not operated under your student affairs and not really having a direct relationship with UTUA, I know we kind of approach it as, we're happy to consult with you. But maybe I'll throw it open, general question. What happens if we consult with you and we say, we just can't do that, we don't like your idea, it's not the right thing to do? What happens then? I mean, chances are you guys probably still aren't very happy with us. You probably still think we're making the wrong decision. And as hard as it is for us to get press in the Collegian, something probably goes out there that says, senior class gift is bad. And we obviously don't want that. We're more than willing to work with you guys and do everything we can, but in the initial resolution, there were a lot of absolutes saying, we must do this, we must do that. If it's summer, we can't. If it's, if it's a safety issue, we can't. Operating in absolutes is very difficult for us because we are the administrator. So.
Last question. Representative Leonard.
Thank you. Well, as a student who actually does work at Lion, which is under the Office of Annual Giving, I do have to say that the alumni that I do talk to, hundreds each night that I do work, And they sometimes talk about class gifts, and they do have a huge amount of pride about that. I guess my real concern again is that there was no real announcement. I mean, you and I both know that there are thousands and thousands of different class funds, academic programs that people can donate to. I'm sorry, not donate, can give to. And
You work at Lion.
I mean, we have 500,000 living alumni. Why wasn't there time to get something started? Why couldn't the office create a fund to not just help out with the benches, but create a fund that will help out, keep up the maintenance for all class gifts, like the aquariums or the Lion Shrine?
That endowment that you're speaking of, if you're not familiar, is essentially, you get $50,000, you dump it in the savings bank, the money, gets interest, we spend that interest, the money keeps generating new money, more or less, layman's terms. The endowment's been brought forth through ballot selection, which we do to decide like the top 10, top 3 gifts. I would say probably about 50% of the time over maybe the last 20 years that I have records of. It's been on the top 3 for students to vote on, never got through. Not every, because it gets votes, but the majority of students approach it and say, well, that's helping other people's class gifts. We want our own legacy. We want our own dynamic on campus. We want our own place to come out. Go ahead.
But the thing is, why should that be a class gift? It should be something where the alumni can contribute to continually every year.
Well,
they call them several times a year.
alumni by any means can give back to their class gift. Everyone kind of has a standing endowment, as it says, but it's not like I'm a class of 2007 grad. I think I gave to the class of 2007 last year when Lion called me. And they can use that money and it sits there in the allocation, which you're familiar with, but it's just essentially like a fund that it goes into, and it'll stay there. The only difference is, it's not an endowment, it's not really generating that own money, it's a fund, there are certain endowment minimums that the university needs to invest that time and money. So by all means, when you guys graduate, if you want to give back to your class, you can do that. Even if that money existed, you're still replacing the benches, you're still creating new materials, you're still, if you put, part of the quaintness of that gift was that, it looked historic. It was Penn State. You had seen it maybe in some old pictures or since your freshman year here. But if we replaced it and it was brown instead of pink, or the materials weren't good enough, we'd still be running into a lot of the same problems. Again, I encourage you all, by any means, to continue giving your senior class gifts well beyond your graduation year. But it comes back to that, decisions need to be made sometimes. By all means, we welcome student input. We'll do everything we can from this point forward to communicate these issues, to say, hey, changes are going to be made. We'll use all channels we can. We'll at least put it up on our website, and we'll keep you guys advised of it. But in terms of operating in absolutes, in terms of being able to really delegate a lot of this decision making, one, it's not the most responsible thing in the world because everybody has different opinions. Two, it's kind of what our job is to be good stewards to these gifts. To say what is the legacy of the senior class gift program, what's the legacy of this particular year, what's in the best interest of the university and the students and the safety that we're charged with.
Okay, that's definitely all the time we have. Thank you very much.
Again, and you guys have my information, so by all means, feel free to contact me with any questions, and
And if anyone missed that, that's Liz Kernian, and she's the overall chairperson for the class of 2009 class gift.
and she's also up for homecoming queen, so vote for Liz. I'll throw my plug in.
I don't want to get political, but yeah. Okay, so moving on to old business. It's no old business. Moving on to new business. Confirmation of executive board nominations. Again, not going to be discussing Pat Gordon for director of off-campus student affairs. Only Ian at this time, so he can come. Oh, okay. So basically, he would be serving as the Director of Legislative Affairs, which is, he would be the Director of that department on the Executive Board. The need for that is quite apparent, especially in the work that I'm doing with the Sportsmanship Council. He would help Gavin and I specifically write legislation, and any of the other Executive Board members, anything that they're working on, help them to kind of collaborate with all of the rest of you. Just as a go-to person, primarily for Gavin and I, so we're not just writing out legislation. So you can come up now. And you have 10 minutes, so you can talk about yourself and what you're going to do in this position, and then 10 minutes will also include the questions, so go ahead.
Okay, so basically you guys heard what my position was. I basically worked with the executive committee and the president, and basically taking their ideas and putting them to words into legislation that you guys can understand. I basically have a very strong background in politics. I grew up in DC, so politics was a norm. I got the privilege of serving as the vice chairman of the state Maryland Teenage Republicans, and then the chairman my senior year in high school. And basically we got a position on the executive board in the state party, and got to go to executive committees, conventions. I was a delegate to a couple of the conventions, just, a junior delegate, so I didn't really get any voting rights, but I still got to be comfortable with legislation. Most legislation was just on, party policies, procedures, but it was still good to see the structure of it. So I learned that pretty fluently. And also in high school, I took 2 years of Model UN, and that was pretty much, I think, one of the best classes I've ever taken in my life, just because it focused your knowledge on the world stage. And we had to write a series of legislative initiatives, on broad things based on your country. I was Russian and Germany. And when I was Germany, I had to write legislation on the death penalty. So I basically had to concise all these ideas about the death penalty to my position and write real legislation. Like, I had to structure it properly, number it properly, and I had to have operative clauses that were actually realistic and made sense. And to concise a problem like the death penalty into operative clauses, that's pretty hard to do, but, I managed. Now here in college, my major is international politics and history. So a couple of my classes, we went over legislative initiatives, just the way legislative works. Like, I took an EU course, actually I'm taking this semester. American politics, I learned about the legislative and that. Also, I'm a pretty good writer. My dad was a writer. Right now he serves as the primary speechwriter for the Secretary of Interior. So basically, growing up in high school, that basically stunk, because I basically went through writing boot camp every time I had an assignment. I sent my writing to him, and he'd come back and it'd have all these changes and marks on it. So that was pretty discouraging. But through that, I learned how to write pretty well. Right now, I still send some of my writing to him to edit it, and I still get that same feeling of how can I do this? But I think I've improved a lot. So that's basically it. You guys know my job description, my background. If you have any questions for me, just let me know.
Okay, any questions? Representative Karasek.
Ian, what do you mentioned that you're going to be working with the executive board. Can you touch on, do you think you'll also be working with the assembly? And if so, how do you see that working? How do you see that playing out?
Well, working with the assembly would basically, if they have questions about some of the wording in the legislation or just some of the actions, they can come to me, because, especially if it's from the executive committee or the president, because I can basically serve as liaison between what they wanted to put into it, because I understand it, because I've worked with them to write it. So you guys can go to me, feel free to talk to me if you have any questions about, structural issues of the legislation that, kind of inhibits its meaning a little bit.
Other questions? Mr. Carvello.
Sorry, I'm getting over a sinus infection. I'm just looking over the position, the description of the position, and obviously I think it's necessary. My question to you, though, is, there's a big difference between other forms of legislation and actual legislative bodies, and then what we deal here in UPA, which is mostly supposed to be to try and get to a point. It's not have a lot of with bells and whistles in it. I was just wondering, how are you going to bridge that difference, one, and where are you going to start to look for examples, since we don't have a long history of a lengthy history of legislation in this organization?
Well, I've actually read through several legislation just from last year and this year. Basically what I found was it's to the point, very simple writing. So basically, I'm just gonna keep to the point. You know, I'm not gonna throw in big words or like lengthy clauses, just what needs to be done, you know, have like a preamble or nature of the situation, you know, explaining why, and then get right into what needs to be done, you know, very simple, bullet pointed, so you guys can understand it, because basically I've read a lot of legislation that's really confusing and you don't know it's on, basically. So I'm just gonna keep it very simple.
Okay, any other questions? Representative Smith?
Good evening. Basically, I just want to know, because I don't have like unless I'm missing it, a resume or anything, but some of your other time commitments and what might preclude you from being involved in this process with the executive board.
Actually, I really don't have any other time constraints, just my majors they're not like engineering or some of the more demanding majors. I am a double major, but they kind of go together, so my classes, I really enjoy them. I don't really spend much time on them, but I mean, honestly, guys, it's liberal arts. But yeah, and I'm not involved in any other activity other than this. I am part of the Navigators, but that's, you know, a Christian club, so, you know, that's not really like a necessary time restraint, you know. But other than that, I'm free to do this.
Other questions? Do you have a question?
No, I'm just a little bit flabbergasted, a little bit.
Representative Ogelberg, would you like to say something?
Are you mad about me at liberal arts comment?
No, because I'm a liberal arts and engineering major.
Oh, yeah?
Double major. So it was very hard for me to swallow that you aren't seeming to be very dedicated to your time or your studies.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that. That was just.
You want to take on this huge position. Like, what is your GPA? Why are you not dedicating your time to your studies? If you have so much free time, why do you want to be here?
My GPA last semester?
Are you finished?
Yes, like, where's your resume?
Do you want, my GPA last semester was a 3.94. Okay? I took 16 credits and 17 credits first semester of last year. My cumulative GPA was 3.93. I love my classes, that's what I'm saying. I'm just saying that, like, I have a lot of free time. I mean, right now I'm working on paper, but I have a lot of free time. I love to get more involved. I mean, the liberal arts thing was a joke, just because, you know, I know I get a lot of beef from people who have, like, you know, engineering majors and stuff like that, who say they're always swamped. So that was kind of a nod off to them. But I mean, I take my education very seriously.
It just doesn't seem like you are from the way that you were just talking.
Okay, all
Do you want
right.
to follow up?
Thank you.
Okay. Representative Karasik?
I'm sorry, I don't have a question, but I do believe that.
Okay, well then you cannot say anything.
I'll save it for discussion.
Okay, yeah, that'd be good. Representative Miller? Okay, any other questions for Ian? Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move into discussion on hand for the Director of Legislative Affairs. Congratulations, Ian. Gavin's not here, so you can't be officially like sworn in and all that, but you can just stay there for now, but usually you'd sit over there. Okay, moving on to resolution number 11, candy for homecoming. 10.
There we go.
Class gift removal, sorry. It's not even that late yet. Okay. Class gift removal. Thank you. Representative Lohner is going to introduce this, which will serve as usual, kind of the first pro in the debate, so.
Good evening, everyone. Before you see two resolutions. One has some bolded text in it. I'll be addressing that later, but that is essentially the updated version that I will be amending. I'll be moving to amend so that the resolution reads that later. To deal with the resolution at its core, there's a few things that I think are really important to point out, because as you heard Jordan say earlier, I think we pretty much established the nature of the problem pretty well. but I'll take any questions about that later. The last line of the nature of the problem I think is important to point out. Whereas with the benches, there's very little student input, we can in the future avoid these situations by working together with the Office of Annual Giving. I think that's one of the hallmarks of this legislation. It's very much about working together with the Office of Annual Giving so that we can, as some of the representatives pointed out earlier, deal with this sort of not knowing anything about what happened within the general student populace. Moving on to recommended course of action. I want to point out that this legislation applies to the movement, removal, or alteration outside the normal upkeep for a class gift. As Jordan said earlier, a lot of times class gifts are worked on, but not necessarily changed in any significant manner, and that's really not something we want to bog down the Office of Annual Giving or this body with. Beyond that, as I mentioned earlier, working together is the spirit of this legislation, and on line 42 you'll see that this would compel the Office of Annual Giving to present a plan of action and or consult the UPUA with their decisions and their plans regarding class gifts. And on the reverse side, I think one of the most important things to note is on line 4 where it says, more generally, attempts should be made to preserve class gifts in their entirety, because that is, that's what we're getting at here, but we are definitely recognizing that movement, removal, or alteration outside normal upkeep is part of having class gifts. So we want this body to sort of be one of the gates that helps get that information to the students. That'll take questions.
Questions? Okay, you may not speak unless someone yields the floor to you. Representative Miller.
I yield the floor.
Thank you. I just have a curious question. This might be stupid, but I'm not too familiar with GPUA, but like, obviously reading this, I know what it means, but in a more theoretical sense. What does this mean? I mean, we, as the Office of Annual Giving, obviously in good faith, we're gonna operate and try and work with you guys and try and convey these things to you. But when I look at it, there's no place for us to sign and agree or say, hey, we're all on board. I know OPP still has some changes. I spoke with you, Sam, this morning and told you, yeah, things are probably gonna still come. We're very particular because we wanna cover all our bases. The only concern I have is that it's understood that kind of the subjectivity is still kind of in our department, and it's still our responsibility and our job. Obviously, we're definitely going to operate in good faith and do everything we can to communicate these things, but I think what I'm most concerned about is it might come back and say, at least from you guys, say, well, you didn't try hard enough, or you could have done more, and that's obviously not something we want. I don't know how that changes anything, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Is that a question?
Mr. Cabello.
I think the question to this body is what does this mean for his office in general? Why are we discussing what implications does it have? I think that's what you're...
Well, I mean, for the most part, we're not on the hook for anything. I mean, obviously, again, I'll keep saying it, we operate in good faith to bring that to you, but I don't want to say you scratch our back, we scratch yours. It's not like UPUA is going out promoting the class gift program. They're just saying we're concerned as students that our legacies, when we're 50 years down the road, might not be honored, even 10 years down the road. We understand that, we respect that. That's how we operate in our day-to-day, anytime these issues come up and how we run the program. I guess my question would be, you know, what happens when these situations come up? And like I kind of opened the field to and didn't get really an answer on is, we bring these things to your attention, we consult you, ultimately the final decision rests with us. If it's not what really you want, are we still kind of in the same position where you're not happy, so frankly, they were a bad collegiate article about us?
Well, that's, I mean, basically, I'll explain, I'll explain the legislative process a little bit to you and what UPUA does This basically is an opinion of this assembly. Obviously, I think it's been reasonably well researched with your offices over it. Basically, what we're here to discuss as student representatives is this the opinion that students across the campus feel, and is that a consensus? The next step is to send it to our president, UPUA, for his signature, and when he signs it, then it's the official position of the student government, and that will empower the president as the elected student representative to begin negotiation and seeing that this can be implemented in some way in terms of providing input on how that would work, what would work with your office. Clearly, I mean, we want to seek input, we're going to disagree, and those will be brought up, I doubt we're going to agree on everything, if that's your point, and those can be resolved, compromised and so forth in the future, but maybe we will disagree with you, and we'll come down pretty strongly about that, and maybe there will be a bad collegiate article in the future, I don't know. But right now, we're just discussing what the opinion of the students is, and moving forward how it's handled, I really can't say.
No, that's fair. Thank you.
Representative Miller.
Can I ask a question of Liz?
Yes.
Sure.
Can you, I'm curious of your opinion on the situation because you are this student in charge of senior class gift, and from what I understand, the Office of Physical Planning didn't contact you directly ever. It kind of went through the Office of Annual Giving and then the message is relayed to you, and I'm just curious if you see a problem with how this goes, if you wish you had been contacted, if you think that you and the committee would have had valuable input to give directly to OPP on this matter to give a student voice.
I'm sorry. That's good, that's good.
It's fine. I was contacted over the summer by Jordan, and the Office of Physical Plan, I'm not sure they work directly with the Office of Annual Giving. And as a student committee, we work under that jurisdiction, so I wasn't expecting any sort of email from the Office of Physical Plan. As the advisor, Jordan forwarded the information to all of us, asked for our opinion. We had also just been formed as a committee, so we were still in the planning stages and getting familiar with the program. So I trusted Jordan with kind of relaying the important facets of the project and what things are going to put in place. I think that it is a great memorial for the class of 1900 class gifts. There are certain limitations, to how we can preserve class gifts in the future, and I think that one big thing we have to look at is just the safety of the students and that sort of thing. And I think that what OPP has come up with installing these other 5 benches with the memorial is a great way to have the 1900 class gift.
Yeah, Representative Miller. Okay. Other discussion. Okay. I know. All right. Thank you, Liz. We're gonna just go back to discussion on this resolution. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have let that happen. So questions for Representative Wallner, specifically to this resolution only. Representative Smith.
Okay, I have a question for you, Sam, since you're presenting this legislation. Okay, because it is the student's deposit money, it is the seed for the class gift fund. Is there an implied social contract, in your view, for the preservation of said class gift from the class that composes the fund?
Yes, certainly. I don't think that I made that a major point of this resolution because I don't think that my intent was, I know my intent wasn't to deal with the class gift program. It was to deal with the operation of physical class gifts. To more directly answer your question, yes, I believe there's a social contract. I believe that if you are to donate money to your class gift, it is expected that your class gift will be treated with as much respect as it can possibly be given.
Other questions for Sam? For Representative Wallner. Representative Ogelberg.
Okay, since the underlying problem seems to be the lack in funds for restoration, what if we proposed skimming maybe like 1 or 2% off the top of each class gift in general to be put towards a general restoration fund for all of the past gifts? And Because I don't see any class in the future putting their money towards a restoration gift without, it just doesn't seem to be very practical. Maybe if we just took 1 or 2% off each class gift, that would be a way to resolve this to prevent future issues.
I don't want to say that the class gift program is in any way underfunded, but I don't think that they're necessarily in a position where they can feel justified saying, we're going to take 1 to 2% of your donations from your class and apply those maybe to your class gift, but maybe also to other class gifts. And certainly that's not the point of this resolution. And if that turns out down the line to be a feasible solution, or at the very least reasonable concern, then I think that's something totally different that we have to deal with down the line, in conjunction with the Department of Development and Relations.
Okay, other questions for Representative Lohner? Okay, thank you. We're going to move into discussion. Representative Karasik?
Sam, first off, I want to thank you for all the work you've done on this policy. We've heard from you at steering a couple times now, and you've put a lot of work into this, and I think you should be applauded by this assembly for that. I'm strongly in favor of this resolution, and I will keep this as short as possible. UPUA is the official representative body of the undergraduate students, GSA of the graduate students. Students should have a say in what occurs on their campus, and students should have a say in the legacy of what occurs, and that say should come from the appropriately and democratically elected leaders of the students. It is not a give or take situation, in my opinion. It is simply a matter that this is a gift given to the university to memorialize a class that is meant to remain there for posterity. And yes, there are safety issues at hand, but there is no reason why the students or their representative body cannot be contacted, consulted. Thank you. The class gift committee does a fantastic job every year. However, they are not elected, to my understanding, they are not elected by the general student population. They represent the senior class gift of that year. And yes, they do provide valuable input, but this body speaks for the undergraduate students. We are authorized to do so. And in that light, we should be consulted. And that is what this policy, and that is what this resolution goes for, is that we should be consulted on these matters. And that rather than just getting rid of the legacy of a class, we can work together to, with consensus, moving forward to find the best solution for both the university, safety, and the students.
Representative Lohner?
Thank you, Representative Harrison. I wish I'd had a chance to say this before he got to speak, but now it's fine. I move to amend my resolution 10, which is the resolution dated October 15th. I move to amend that resolution to read what the resolution dated September 26th is reads. And I guess
For specifically what part?
okay, the parts in addition to just it doesn't change the spirit of the legislation at all. In addition to changing just a few points of diction, the bolded section that begins on line 41 of page 1 is added to deal with the situations that deal with maybe the class gift needs to be changed before the end of the fiscal year, which is much different than our academic year, so it's different from our terms of office. And it also deals with immediate and potentially hazardous safety concerns, because in those situations, obviously, it could be very dangerous to delay. But also says that after these actions are taken, either during the summer or in cases of safety, they must then be reported to the UPUA after the actions. Additionally, my amendment deals with page 2, line 1. There's a bolded section that deals with the publicity concerns that were voiced earlier. Obviously, no one except the collegiate controls what goes in the collegian, but with this, we would recommend that the Office of Annual Giving put in place a policy that says they must contact the collegian and the news sources.
Okay,
I second the motion.
any objections?
I
Representative Leonard? Leonard?
honestly don't understand what the amendment was because it was muddled in a whole bunch of.
Okay.
It's the second, you have the full text of the amendment.
And also, can I ask that when legislation is presented to EPUA that we have it on one piece? If you're gonna change legislation, please do so instead of hanging out two. It is very confusing.
I'm sorry, based on, I believe, I'm sorry to not be able to report.
Go ahead.
Based on the operating procedures of this body, after it's been approved by steering, changes have been made in the form of amendments. I figured that this, with the advice of the chairman of the assembly, I thought that this was the best way to get those two major amendments. Not even major amendments, those two wordy amendments in there.
Okay, so just for clarification, you have one paper which is the original, the second paper which has the bold-faced words that are the changes you would like to make on page 1, lines 41 through 43, contain those changes, and on this back side, which is page 2, lines 1 through 5, also in bold print. And then he said were you referring to anything else? You said something about diction you wanted to change, obviously the date also.
Yeah, the date was one of those.
And that can just be friendly amended, so it's not a contentious issue.
I don't believe there were significant word changes, otherwise I'd change one word, the very last line of the document.
Okay, can you come forward, because I think part of the problem is you're so close up here and no one can hear.
To the best of my knowledge, to the best of my recollection, the only diction change I made was I changed the very last line to read, instead of not destroyed, it says not removed, because not all 9 benches were removed, but several were, or not all 9 benches were destroyed, but several were removed.
Representative Karasik?
I think the confusion is that we don't, I just want to clarify.
Okay, old version, new version with bold letters is what he is amending.
These are the proposed amendments, but this is the resolution, is that correct?
Yes.
So the one with UPUA up top is the resolution, these are his proposed amendments submitted in writing. Yes. Thank you.
To steering, through steering. Representative Byrne?
So this is the first amendment, and this one, so it's just stated wrong, incorrectly?
No.
You already said this is one we passed.
You didn't pass anything.
Once again, for clarification, this resolution was passed out of facilities, passed by steering, and is being presented to the assembly. It is dated October 15, 2008, has UPUA logo. This is what we're debating now for passage. Sam, in consultation with the Office of Annual Giving, has decided to make some changes to his legislation since he was the immediate language changes and other after consulting with them. And that's found on this version without the UPUA logo. And the substantial changes are in bolded. Sam is making a motion to add the bolded text, if you will, to the other version, or basically to adopt what's written on this paper as the resolution we're debating tonight. Is that clarified? Okay.
Okay, so to make
Sorry for
that
confusion.
a little bit easier, on your special version here, line 43, after it says University Park Undergraduate Association, that first section of bold print on the front side of the page would be inserted there. On the back side, on line 1, it says perpetuity, then the second portion of bold print would be inserted there. Good, okay. Moving into further discussion, that amendment passes. Moving on to further discussion on the entire resolution. Representative Miller.
I am hesitant because I feel like it's a bit general when it's saying that the Pennsylvania State University and the Office of Annual Giving, which is responsible for class gifts, must present the plan of action to and consult representatives of the student body. To what end? So they come and they present the plan. Is it a special presentation? Is it a piece of legislation? Like, what are we envisioning here? Is my question.
Okay. Representative Lohner.
This is a rare instance, and I think that would be up to the, that would come from either the facilities committee, the decision to write a resolution about that, or a presentation, which I think it should be, then it needs to come from the leadership of the assembly. I don't think it's generality is a problem, because its generality is it makes it all encompassing in the sense that it's not meant to prescribe action on action within our body. It's meant to allow our body to take action.
Okay, and just so we don't keep doing this, and this is partly my fault, it's okay to have dialogue between representatives, but not supposed to ask specific questions. The questioning period is over, so this is just discussion on the resolution itself. Representative Lersch?
I think what Sam's trying to say here is that this isn't like a contract that we're approving tonight. This is just the idea, and like you said, so we can, make further progress in this situation.
Other discussion. Representative Malloy?
When I asked Nick to investigate these benches, I certainly did not think it would turn into everything it has. But I do feel that basically, with this resolution, if the Office of Annual Giving, which has said that they would like to work with us, they would love to work with us, they would love to inform us, and they feel that relationship could easily be made. In actuality, even if we pass this resolution, they could still say, we're not doing anything with you. But they've come and they've said that they are willing to work with us, and we, in this resolution, are saying we would like to work with you. And so, they may not have an official signature on the bottom saying we 100% agree, nor can we say you are compelled and have to do this with us. But they have come to us and we have come to them. The students have said that they are concerned about this, so we are talking about this and making progress on this. I'm very happy to say that I've gotten a lot of emails about this. This did concern a lot of students. They were kind of just wondering where these benches went, and then the Collegian article. And so they were very happy that their student government is getting involved on a legitimate concern. So I just like to say, I believe this resolution is not too vague. I don't think we need to nickel and dime it with, oh, what happens here, what happens there. I believe that the Office of Annual Giving will work with UPUA. Whoever's in charge there, whoever's in charge here, will decide if it's a special presentation, if it's a memo, or whatever. That's just something we just can't mandate in this. Because once again, we can't really mandate anything with this on behalf of the Office of Annual Giving. So I encourage you once again to pass this resolution.
Further discussion. Representative Lersch?
And one other point I'd like to make in support of this legislation is that if you approve this legislation and this problem occurs in the future, we've shown this is precedent that, we tried our best to show our support in this situation, that it would be the Office of Annual Giving that would take. We're clear, we did our part in trying to represent the student body. So just to clear that as well.
Representative Smith?
Sorry, I want to ask one more. Am I able to distribute anything related to what I'm about to say?
Yes.
Okay.
Please.
Well, I know sometimes that you guys can think I'm a little bit off my rocker, but what I want to be explicit about is that...
For the record, he said we might sometimes think that he's off his rocker.
Yes, you can put that in the record. Okay, what I'm passing out is a letter to the editor that was sent to the Collegian in 1908. And what's interesting about that is they also donated Class Ivy. And it specifically talks about the fact that class gifts should be sacrosanct to those that donated them. A paragraph in the middle. When a class leaves such a token of love and respect for their alma mater, one which is so successful and ornamental a gift as this clock, speaking about damage that was going on to the clock at the time, it would seem that the least that could be done would be to do nothing which would mar the looks of their present. Otherwise, there will be little inducement for classes in the future to remember their college in this way. Okay. Basically, if a student had damaged those benches, I would be disappointed. If a faculty member had damaged those benches, I would be very disappointed. And just because the administration got rid of the benches does not mean we should not be disappointed. I urge all of you to vote in favor of Sam's resolution, and I think that you all should take it to heart and move forward in your own ways in order to make sure the class gifts are preserved for future generations.
Thank you. Further discussion on resolution 10, 11, 10. Representative Mance.
Let me just say, as an extension, I really do appreciate some of the passion you can see that Representative Smith has put into this. He originally was one of the people that helped me get going with this, even though he's not on the legislation. And one of the things that I pledged you that we'll be doing, especially if it falls under my jurisdiction, is facilities chairman, to investigate these things as they come up in the future, and the next time come up with more, perhaps a policy on this rather than just a resolution that will create. I am very interested in creating some type of a committee jointly, perhaps with UPUA administrators, and also, giving deal with issues like this as they come in the future. So just for that.
Representative Szymanski.
Motion to end discussion.
Second. Any objections? Okay, discussion on resolution 10 has ended. We are going to move to a vote. Secretary? A yes means you are in favor of this resolution passing.
All right. So Michael Holdinger, No William Bard, Jim Byrne, Rob Carvello,
Yes.
Hillary Gupta, yes. Nicholas Heim, him and Sarah Donnenberg both gave me proxy votes. Sarah Donnenberg abstained and Nicholas Heim said yes. Hubert Hines,
Yes.
Andrew Karasik,
Yes.
John King, Peter Corey,
Yes.
Caitlin Kunkel, yes. Sean Leonard,
Yes.
Daniel Lurch,
Yes.
Sam Leonard,
Yes.
Benjamin Lombard,
Yes.
Stephen Lucas, Nick Vance,
Yes.
Sean Malloy,
Yes.
Samantha Miller,
Yes.
Christopher Moreau, Christopher Knopp, Ali Okelberg,
Yes.
Greg Plum, Brian Poland, Kelly Potter,
Yes.
Megan Quinn, Christian Ragland,
Yes.
Amy Sanders,
Yes.
Philip Slosser, Richard Shermansky,
Quick point of clarification, we can give proxy votes?
Representative, if you're absent, yes, as a voting member, you're allowed to submit proxy votes.
Oh.
You cannot leave right now, though.
Okay, yes.
Colleen Smith, yes. Matthew Smith,
Yes.
Michael, okay.
Okay, the resolution passes 2301. Okay, yeah, just on that note, you can submit proxy votes. I don't know why you would do that unless you have a serious emergency, not to, or you're very, very ill, not to watch the debate right now, or et cetera. So, which is probably what some people are doing, unfortunately. Just to call them out. So, look at the name tags that aren't here and you'll know where they are.
Phillies game back.
Or Phillies game, which is totally unimportant.
Excuse me, they're about to come back.
Okay. He has to be yielded before.
I move to yield the floor.
I was just gonna ask if there was anything else needed of us now that the resolution's passed, because we're gonna go out and watch the debate. I'm not gonna stand, but,
Great.
But again, I left my information with Ralph, and a few of you have it, so feel free to, again, contact me or Liz with any questions or any further information that we might need. And I thank you again for having us, so.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to resolution 11. This is going to be introduced by programming chair.
Okay, my resolution is pretty self-explanatory. There's barely any wording on it, but I know that I'm asking for a lot of money. I'm literally going based on last year's homecoming parade. We spent about $100 on candy, and then by the time we got to college ag, I think like almost all of it was gone, and we were sending kids to like go get more candy and just keep going. It's a pretty long walk, so that's why we need a lot of candy. It sounds so stupid. I honestly don't think we're gonna use all $200. Like, we're probably gonna go to the dollar store and just get like a whole bunch, but you honestly cannot walk in the parade without anything if you're just holding a banner, because you don't have a float. It just kinda looks dumb. So, that's why I'm asking this.
Okay, this has to be brought to the floor by 2/3. Is there any discussion on bringing this to the floor? Any objections to bringing this to the floor for debate? Okay, we are now moving into questions for Representative Gupta. Representative Hines?
I have a question. What happens if we don't use our $200? Do we get to eat the candy, or?
I mean, if the bags aren't open, I'll probably return them, but if not, then sure, go for it.
Representative Smith?
Hillary, I just want to know, how are we going to carry $200 worth of candy?
Oh, it's really easy. We just carry bags. It's fine, I promise it works.
Representative Karasik?
What kind of candy is going to be purchased? Is this to be an interest of contention?
I don't know. Whatever I can find.
Can we bring Butterfies?
What?
Representative Hines?
Can we bring Reese's Cups and throw them like Frisbees?
This is real questioning, yes.
You can't throw. You have to hand them out.
Okay, just to kind of defend her a little bit, because some of these questions are a little bit silly. There are children out watching the parade and things like that, and because we don't have a float, we want to, have something to give to the community. And there was also discussion on printing up some kind of flyers, putting our name out, UP Way, what we do, why we're here, things like that. That's another issue. I can't really even hear myself in the microphone for some reason, that's weird. So, anyways, any other questions for Representative Gupta? Okay, thank you. Moving into discussion on Resolution 11, Mr. Ravello.
I'm going to sound like the Grinch here, and I told Hillary that I was going to say this because I feel compelled to. But right now we have $1,700 or so in unrestricted money, and we've had major setbacks in the past week regarding funding from UPAC, and in terms of restructuring the funding fee. And although this is something that many clubs do, and this is perfectly reasonable to spend money to provide, provide service and to give children candy and everything like that, looking at just the dollar figure in proportion to our unrestricted monies, it is a large percent. And in good conscience, I can't vote, even though I want to, and I know homecoming's important and it's UPUA's name and there's an image thing associated with that. When we can barely fund actual programs that we run, and I know many chairs can second this on not having money to do their programming on behalf of the student body, to spend a proportion on candy, I don't think I can justify at this time, as sad as I know as dedicated Hillary and her committee is to this cause. I do have reservations and don't think I can support this.
Representative Szymanski?
A motion to amend the resolution from $200 to $50.
$50?
Yes. If my committee could, if the LAUC can do it, the UPUA can do it.
Before anyone seconds that, I object, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, is there a second?
A second, no objection.
Any objection? Okay, any seconds to Okay, all right. Any objections?
I
Okay.
object on
Okay.
discussion.
Okay, is there discussion on the amendment? Representative Byrne.
Can I ask a question just for the board? Like what does everyone think is reasonable, a reasonable amount of money? Like $100?
Well,
Right now, we're debating 50.
we're just talking about 50 right now. Representative Karasik?
I don't think Hillary's coming in here trying to steal money because she had a sweet tooth. Hillary wants to further the name of this organization, and so she did not just choose $200 randomly. She had explained that this was a calculated decision based on last year and how much money we spent last year. And therefore, I don't think it's necessarily this is necessarily an appropriate amendment, that when we have an amount come before us to then dock that amount down to 50. So I'm going to vote strongly against this amendment. I am very not in favor of it. I think that the resolution should remain as it is, and we should vote based on the $200 as requested by the programming chair.
Representative Leonard?
You know, as an organization, a student government that is hardly even recognized by the students of this university, I strongly suggest that we do go forward with the $200 worth of candy because this is our name of UPUA. Last year, I remember people were calling it Oopla. They didn't know what UPUA was. Any amendment to strike down the further and betterment of the name of UPUA is, utterly ridiculous, and I will object to it every time.
Representative Miller? Sorry, Representative Miller.
I just think, I know it's a large percent, but honestly, $200 isn't gonna carry my committee's programming budget anyway. We're pretty stunted, and I know I'm not gonna be allotted the rest of the unrestricted funds anyway. I probably won't be allotted any of it. So if this is something to get our name out, I don't even know what else we're gonna use it for at this point, because everything we wanna do requires so much more money than we have to begin with. So, but I would strongly urge that if we put this money towards the candy, we do something like print labels with UPUA's name on it and stick it on every single piece of candy to make sure that it's not just getting thrown out there without our name on it. Have fun now.
Further discussion on this amendment? Representative Shermansky?
Are we honestly going to believe that the name of UPUA is going to get a better reputation with candy?
Yes.
It's worth a shot.
No, I'm being serious here. I mean, we are throwing candy to children in a parade. To me, this is not going to get our name out there at all. I mean,
Executive Board.
So like the little kids are gonna remember what UPUA is because we gave them a blow pop. Okay, I'm not really following this. I think $50 is sufficient. We go to a dollar store, we buy a whole bunch of candy that way, throw a bunch of Tootsie Rolls at them, they'll be happy.
Representative Leonard?
Well, to not believe that this will not help UPUA out, again, I'm going to say is ridiculous. Because those of you who believe that Don would not help UPUA out, we just got interviewed, we met Governor Palin because of what we were doing. Our name will be in the paper tomorrow. UPUA meets Governor Palin canning for Don. If we don't do these little things, then our name is not going to get out there, and we're going to be sitting here debating over $50 to give to little kids. And by the way, it's not just little kids that are out there. People sit out on, it's the Penn State community. Going to the homecoming website, the homecoming parade is they had a poll there. The homecoming parade is voted the #1 best event for homecoming by 67%, okay? So if you don't think that our name is going to get better or that people aren't going to see what we're doing and recognize that, then maybe you should actually get off UPUA.
Rebuttal. All right, fair enough.
Representative Corey?
Just for clarification, you're not allowed to throw candy. It's a security added, and I just don't very percent.
We will be tossing it gently and handing it in their hands. Representative Lombard.
I just want to say that I agree with Representative Leonard saying that I think it would be great publicity for UPUA because it really, the best way to get to somebody's mind and somebody's heart is to go through their stomach. And, be it the small kids out there with their sweet tooth or, the anxious college student that also wants to have some candy. It really doesn't matter, but I think if we were just to be out there with just a little bit of candy, just kind of, willy-nilly giving out some, it would look very bad on this organization. So let's try to make this pretty spirited and energetic while we're out there giving our sweets.
Representative Nance.
I just want to say that as much as I would love to vote to give us about $200 for candy, I just think that the economic reality of the situation here just kind of outweighs what we really want to do. Unfortunately, like Rob said, only $1,700 is restricted right now. I just think that there are other better ways that we need to be spending our money, and I think that we need to be as fiscally responsible as possible.
Representative Colleen Smith.
As a freshman, I don't obviously know that much about the whole homecoming tradition, but I'm on the parade committee, and I just went to various different fraternities and sororities and other organizations today, and got to see their floats and how much pride they had for homecoming and for the homecoming parade, and it kind of made me wish that we had a float or something like that, because I think it's an awesome event. It's homecoming. It's one of the most spirited things, and I think that any activity or any way that we can participate and get our name out there and show our pride for Penn State and for homecoming tradition, I think we should do it, and I think it's worth the cost.
Mr. Crivello.
First, just a quick comment in regards to debate. It is not appropriate for representatives to be laughing or carrying on while another member has the floor. Everyone should be given respect in discussion, even if we completely disagree with the individuals. I would like to note that because it's happened twice during this meeting, and if anything, and I respect every one of you, you should all respect each other. That is paramount to have an open and free discourse. Now, going to the actual merits of the discussion, I completely agree both with Representative Szymanski and Representative Leonard. Now, the problem is, how do you resolve that? These activities are tremendously valuable for publicity. At the same time, can we do less with well, I guess not less with more, but less with less, is what we're asking. And this is a compromise proposal, is what's being offered by the representative. Yes, we need to advertise, we need to publicize what we're doing, but is $200 the appropriate amount? And basically what we're talking about is roughly a couple percentage points of our budget. I'll remind you that right now we do not have money to fund our elections. I don't know if anyone's thought of that. We have money to pay our commissioners, but as far as actually paying for elections, which cost well over $6,000 last year, we don't have a lot of money. That is a sad reality right now where we're fiscally at, and we're continually being stonewalled on this front. So $150, that's a lot of flyers advertising our elections. That's what I'm looking at right now. And while I would love, and last year I voted for a lot more for homecoming, if I recall, it was almost $500. We also have a $34,000 budget. We can afford to give back a little bit to the students and to the community when we're in that position. This is a tough decision. It does go down to publicity and whether you think we can secure money in the long run. But let's keep this on the merits and stay respectful and have a good discourse, because there are good ideas for what we're discussing right now.
Representative Gupta.
Okay, even with what Ralph said, I'm going based off of last year. I'm not just trying to take $200 just to play with it. I'm gonna try to spend as little money as possible, and if I do that, then I promise it will give it right back. It's embarrassing to walk just with our banners, seeing as, let's be serious, we really aren't recognized by that many students at Penn State. So that's why I'm asking for it. $200 does sound ridiculous, I know, but I promise I'll try to spend $100 and then return it. But I think if you knock it down to 50, we're gonna make it to College Ave and then just walk, so.
Representative Lurch?
Unfortunately, I won't be marching with you guys in the parade, but this would be my take on it. Like, for merit, for us to get our names out, I agree with, both parties. Giving out candy is a great way, but also, we don't have the economics. But I think if we get the people involved, getting our name out there is not just by passing out candy, it's about, getting the people involved. So, this is just my suggestion, coming from the band geek in the room. Maybe singing fight songs or doing cheers, things like that. Is really gonna get this Michigan weekend, guys, play on that, really get the crowd into it. And hey, I think that would actually, get more attention than just handing out a lollipop. But a good combination of both, I think, would produce the greatest effort, or the best effect on our behalf, so.
Representative Miller?
I know that we're 2 days away from homecoming, but I think that, a lot of places are willing to donate things, and we tried to put out a solicitation letter in the next day to see if we could just get any candy for people who felt bad for us, or any Walmart give out gift certificates, and some other stores do too, if you just ask them what's listed in the solicitation letter. That might be something to look into before we have a last resort to anything right here.
Representative Corey?
I would, just going along with what Sam said, I would strongly suggest contacting companies to see if they would be willing to donate, because I know a lot of them are willing to donate for the cause such as homecoming, and it does put their name out there. I think it would save some money.
Yeah, we're just debating this amendment still, but thanks for that. Representative Hines?
What about if instead of giving candy out, because we can't throw it, we just take peppermint to the shirts, because you can get $50 worth of peppermint and have enough to cover your shirt and just kind of run into the crowd and let people take it off of you? Because people talk about that.
That's creative. Still on this amendment though. Representative Leonard?
Motion to end.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any objections to ending debate on this amendment? Okay. Yeah, we can just raise hands for if you would like to see this resolution amended so that instead of where it reads $200 for the purpose of the request and for the plan of action, it will say $50 in each of those spaces, as proposed by Representative Shermansky. So if you're in favor of the $50, please raise your hand at this time. Okay, all opposed? Hands high, thanks. Yeah, okay, that fails. Okay, moving back to discussion on the entire resolution number 11. Representative Miller.
I move to insert a line in the plan of action that says, prior to the $200 for purchasing the candy, that in the next 24 hours, every effort will be made to elicit donations from local companies for candy to elicit spend any money. If you choose to shorten that sentence, I would give it that.
Okay. Secretary will read what she got out of that.
Still processing.
I just wrote, I moved to add a line that says every effort will be made to solicit donations before spending any money.
Is that
So
sufficient?
minus the I will say every effort will be used to solicit.
Should we put a deadline on that? Because then, eventually someone's going to have to go to the store and buy it if you don't get it.
I think that the chair of the committee, who is responsible, understands your amendment.
And the timeline that's required for getting soliciting and getting donations instead of spending. Is there a second on that amendment?
Second.
Any objections to that amendment? Representative Gupta?
I completely understand it, I would totally do it if it wasn't Thursday. It would be Thursday morning I'd call, and I need to know in the next couple of hours. I just kind of feel like that's kind of a...
Okay, so you object to that amendment, okay? So, a discussion on the amendment that Secretary just read, proposed by Representative Miller. Representative Lurch?
I think the amendment's a bad idea, just in the case, because of such short notice. I mean, we start calling places around saying, oh yeah, by the way, donations. I mean, that kind of makes us look almost irresponsible. Why weren't we planning this ahead of time? So just because of that, I would disagree.
Okay, so you object. Representative Byrd?
But this is nothing final, this is just, we can do this if we want it, but we don't have to do it, you know?
Did everyone hear?
I don't get why. I know Hillary like that. It's not you have to do it, it's like the whole, like everybody can do it, it's not just on your shoulders, you know? I mean, we might as well add that amendment, so some of the members can go out and do that.
Okay. Representative Corey?
I fully support Sam's amendment, just to go along. Last year, I attained 3 boxes containing 300 boxes of Mike and Ike's from Just Born, the day of homecoming, by just calling and asking, because the person who said they would bring candy for our homecoming float actually did not come through, and I did have a connection through Just Born, and I called and asked and solicited, and they were more than willing to comply, and I'd be more than willing to ask again.
So you'd be willing to ask again? Great. Representative Miller? Further discussion on just this amendment? Yeah.
Well, I mean, if it helps anyone, I will volunteer any spare time I have tomorrow trying to get what we can get. I'll do that personally. I'll drive to the stores early in the morning if that's what it takes. I just think it's a better route.
Mr. Carvello?
Just a quick comment, I mean, even if this passes tonight, the amendment and the resolution, I don't know, I haven't talked to Gavin to see whether he still has to sign this before any money can be spent. So, I mean, there are some time restrictions that are have to be in play. I don't see why this is any more burdensome than any other requirements. With that said, I move to end debate on the amendment.
Is there a second? Any objections to ending debate on specifically this amendment? Okay. Everyone clear about the amendment that Secretary read, proposed by Representative Miller? Okay. Show of hands in support of this amendment. Opposed? Okay, abstention? Okay, that amendment passes. Further discussion on the resolution as a whole. Representative Lohner,
I move to end debate.
there's a second. Any objections to ending debate?
And I just have a point of order, just to answer out. Like, do we have to add an amendment that the allotted $200 is not spent, that will be given back to you?
Yeah, the secretary will have that in her minutes and that will be updated on this resolution.
That's actually specified in the bylaws for any outstanding allocation.
Okay.
Okay, any objections to ending debate on the resolution as a whole? Okay, roll call on resolution 11.
Michael, you're not here. Laura Jimber,
Yes.
Ralph Carvello,
No.
Sarah Donovan, proxy to vote of yes. Hillary Gupta.
Yes.
Nicholas Heim, Hubert Hines.
Yeah.
Yes, you said.
Yeah.
All right, Andrew Karasik,
Absolutely.
John King, Peter Corey,
Yes.
Caitlin Kunkel. Yes. Sean Leonard,
Yes.
Daniel Lurch,
Yes.
Sam Loner,
No.
Benjamin Lombard,
Yes.
Stephen Lucas, Nick Mance,
No.
Sean Malloy, Samantha Miller,
Yes.
Christopher Moreau, Ellie Okelberg, Greg Plum, Bryant Poland, Kelly Potter, Christian Ragland,
Yes.
Amy Sanders,
Yes.
Philip Slusser, Richard Shermansky,
No.
Colleen Smith,
Yes.
Matthew Smith,
Abstain.
Michael Smith, Michael Walls. Resolution 11 passes 16-4-1. Okay. Moving in to comments for the good of the order.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, wow. Okay. Report by the association directors and staff. They should be very energized at this point because they all went out and got drinks for themselves. Yes. Yes, Chief Staff.
Okay, that was interesting. I'll apologize on behalf of the executive board for the small outburst a little bit earlier. I think we can all agree that while Representative Shermansky is a talented debater, he can also be a talented comedian. So, sorry about that. I hope there was no disrespect rendered there. I want to thank the Internal Development Committee for continuing to work with us in the executive board confirmations. I was really pleased with the way things went down tonight. I feel like we have a qualified person in for legislative counsel, and I really thank the Internal Development Committee for their willingness to continue working with us, so thank you there. This past weekend we held our second executive board meeting. It went really well, actually. Things are starting to come together. We have a lot of great ideas for projects from directors. I won't steal from their thunder by describing them to you, but as for myself, this week I'm working on Board of Arbitration recruitment. I'll be working with Representative Crivello to talk with the Student Organizational Conduct Committee about a possible joining of forces in one way or another to hopefully effectively staff and run the Board of Arbitration and encourage good communication with that organization. Other than that, and planning the executive board meetings, that's about all I'm up to.
Questions, Representative Karasik?
Can the ID committee, when we get, as soon as possible, get a description for off-campus relations, so we can go ahead and bring that before the assembly? So we can vote on that and bring it before the assembly?
Is that what you're waiting on for him?
Yes. Yeah, we just didn't have clarification on the position, so he came
Sure.
in tonight, but we couldn't pass it because we don't know what he's supposed to be doing.
I'll get it to you by this weekend.
Thank you.
Further questions for Chief Staff? Mr. Crivello?
I've talked to Gavin about this, and I think the steering committee has expressed some interest in requiring the exec board to write written descriptions just as committee chairs. That way we can further make presentations, reports as brief as possible. What's your opinion on that, and maybe could you start that dialogue in the exec board?
Written descriptions of the...
Not written descriptions, written outlines, I'm sorry, of your reports.
The same way the committee chairs do it and
Yes.
things? Yeah, I mean, if you guys feel like that would be helpful and that's something that would serve the organization, then I can't imagine it'd be too much trouble.
Okay, other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Treasurer, Matt Shroff.
Good evening, everyone. Our current balances, right now, our UPAC allocations are $18,645.07. And unrestricted is at $1,777.11. I transferred $100 to Libby, which was the organization that took our yearbook picture last week. In terms of open purchase orders, I know Ralph posed a question last time. Everything from over the summer has been accounted for. The only open purchase orders as of right now are for the Penn State, with the Penn State Computer Store, which was for the laptop, the legal affairs that I mentioned last time. We also have the Copy Central purchase order. Anything we don't use will be returned to us at that $100 amount. We also have the general stores for office supplies as well. In terms of sitting on this student activity fee board, to say the least, it was extremely frustrating. Our resolution that was brought to the table was for giving GSA and UPUA each 5% of the student activity fee fund, and it just was not received well, and I was especially, I guess, appalled by how a fellow student on UPAC was not supportive of putting the money in an elected leader's hands. But to kind of strengthen our argument for the November meeting, we are looking to formulate a more exacting budget of exactly how we're going to spend the 5% would be roughly $250,000, putting that towards legal services as well as the tenant landlord mediation center. So we're going to come up with a more formalized budget around those expenses. As well as we're also gonna conduct further research into the budget of other institutions comparable in size and stature to Penn State. We had some of that information, but by request of some of the faculty members on that board, we would like to see more of that, so we will do that. But if anyone has anything they can add to any of the research that we're conducting, I would definitely appreciate your input.
Questions? Mr. Corbella?
Could buy a lot of candy with $250,000. But my question is regarding not only purchase orders, but don't we have outstanding money from Purdue for the ABDS conference they're supposed to be giving us?
That I don't know, because that's not reflected anywhere in ASA, so.
Can you find that out, and if so, be like a debt collector and start banging on their doors, because they have money and we need it.
Who would have that contact?
Well, I would talk to Gavin to see if that's true, and I believe Mike might have contact.
It is true. It is true, and he is contacting them, but they're not getting back to him. For obvious reasons. Other questions? Representative Miller?
Committee chairs put in a budget for their committees. I don't know if you had a chance to look at that, but I was curious if there's further work we need to do on those particular budgets.
To be honest, I haven't even been presented with those budgets as of right now.
I'm gonna just send it directly to you then.
Representative Mance?
Just out of curiosity, the $18,000 that we have in the packet, will any of that be able to be used in the future to fund our elections?
Only what's been out, it's all been allocated. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, everything's already been previously allocated, so no.
Other questions? Representative Byrne?
Did you get a receipt for the homecoming event?
Not yet, but I'm stopping by the office tomorrow, so I'll take care of that.
Other questions? Okay, thank you. Moving on to Greek life with Pierce. He is absent again. Moving on to media, Adam Ferrone.
Just very quickly, things have been moving along at a steady pace regarding the media. I had some good dialogues this week with Representative Mance and Representative Loader, and I just encourage everyone to continue to come to me with any questions about the media, because I really do enjoy just tackling any types of problems and giving any types of advice that I can give. Additionally, you guys might have seen in today's copy of the Collegian, there was an editorial kind of calling UPUA out on the mat on just some things regarding how gravitous a lot of what we're doing is, and they kind of challenged us to step up to the plate and attack really large issues. And I think to an extent the Collegian really doesn't see how the UPUA works, so sometime either at the end of this week or at the beginning of next week, Gavin's going to have a guest column kind of detailing things about that, and that's all I really have for right now.
Questions? Has that guest column been confirmed?
Not 100% yet, but I talked to Terry and there really shouldn't be any problems.
Okay. For next week?
Ideally Friday, but I just don't know if there's going to be room in the paper on Friday.
Yeah, homecoming, and he said probably next week. Other questions? Okay, thank you. Business, Lou.
Good evening, everyone. This on? Can y'all hear me? Yeah, great. In lieu of tonight's debate in regards to Resolution 11 and in lieu of our Treasurer's report, I made a decision to carry fundraising efforts that require very small amounts of funding to start up initially. So some of the larger events that I had proposed last week, I'm going to postpone until the springtime. In the business school, we say it takes money to make money. So a couple of the efforts that my committee has supported and that we will go through on. Last week I proposed the idea of a Rockstar promotion, Rockstar being the energy drink that Coca-Cola makes. Nick Visconti, who's a student rep who serves in my department, will be contacting Rockstar within the next few days in regards to how we will actually put that promotion out in the Penn State community. It can be done either through sponsoring an event, so they could pay us to promote their product through either some sort of like a basketball tournament or something like that. So it would be like UPUA and Rockstar sponsored event. or we could actually just sell the product. We could promote it that way and take some of the proceeds from it. So he will be in discussion with them in the next few days, and I'll have more information about that come next week. In addition to that, we will be engaging in the sale of some carnations during the holiday season. Morgan, who's a member of my committee, will be contacting various florists in the downtown State College area to see what interest they would have, whether or not they want us to sell our product for them, or whether they would actually want to sell it themselves on campus or downtown, and we would do either like 50-50 with the sales and things like that. So she will be in contact with those vendors in the next week. And one last thing, in lieu of Representative Gupta's comments last week about having UPUA polos, there was some discussion in my department, and we decided that either having UPUA jackets being made and having an internal fundraiser within the UPUA could be possible if that's something that the Assembly wants to be on and approves. And in addition to that, we spoke about having a t-shirt sale, which we would expose the entire university student body to. That would raise some funds for student government. And if any of these ideas, if you have comments or concerns that you want to address at a later date, please feel free to email me or speak to me after the meeting.
Questions? Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to Women's Affairs, Ms. Canagaraja.
Today was Love Your Body Day, which is an annual project that's hosted by Center for Women Students, and I helped out with that, but the Women's Affairs, UPUA, the name wasn't directly tied with that, just because I've only recently made their acquaintance, and they aren't too familiar with the Women's Affairs yet, so I want to allow a little bit more involvement on my behalf before I ask them to take part in their projects. For November, I'm planning to help out in advertising a Women in Science Symposium, so I'm going to figure out how to do that. The main problem I'm having right now is trying to gather my subcommittee. I guess it's my fault, kind of, because I had to find a more efficient mode of communication because my persistent emails do not seem to be doing the trick. So I will be working on that to find a good time. That's it.
Questions? Representative Smith?
Again, first of all, I want to say I think that both you and Cindy are doing a great job, and actually most of the executive board from the Assembly, or my sample from the Assembly. I see a lot of times on like all sorts or things, or whatever they call that paper, like this women's council that reports to the president. Is that something that you sit on, or that you might be able to become involved in? Do you even know what I'm talking about?
Is it the Women's Council? I haven't.
It's the Women's Commission.
The Women's Commission? Okay.
No, I haven't.
Okay, I'm just saying, I'm wondering if you're going to get involved with that. It's a group that provides feedback on women's issues directly to the president. So it's just something that I'm interested in knowing if you're going to pursue that.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely look into it. Thank you.
Other questions for Ruth? Okay, thank you. Multicultural Affairs, Cindy?
First of all, I apologize. This is going to be a bit long. Basically, I have 3 points this week. I was talking to Celia Jen. She's the president of UCSA, and she brought up a point of tuition. She's saying that for international students at Penn State, they have to pay international tuition for all 4 years, while some other school, they're only making the international student pay the tuition for the first year, and then regular tuition for the rest of the 3 years. So it's really unfair that they have to pay a higher price, even than out-of-state students for all 4 years. Obviously, this is not something that only my committee can do, so, but at least we can investigate it. So my deputy director, Cyrus Cassidy, he's going to be looking into this, and we'll keep you all updated. My second point is, I was talking to Natsuki, which is the president of the International Student Council, and she said a lot of international students are having a problem with housing, and this is what she said. It's not simply because of the lack of housing, but some communication problems between housing and international students, cultural differences, lack of system to support international students in school. So regarding this, I thought of a orientation program. which is going to be helping students from the moment they got accepted into Penn State and up to they come here and actually take their classes. So I'm trying to get this up and running by the spring semester, so we can have a smaller test of students. So I don't have time to communicate, but I'm going to work on this. And regarding on that other project, I'm going to put that on hold because I think two of these are pretty much all I'm going to be doing this year. So if you have any questions.
And what she means by her committee is her department, just to clarify. Questions for Cindy? Mr. Carvello?
This isn't really a question, but just kind of voice of support. This is a major issue, tuition across the board, so I'm really excited to see your department begin to tackle this and express concerns, because I don't think we have any international student representatives. So this is definitely a concern I've never been approached about. After talking to people, after being approached by you, college engineering, it is a concern of students. So I thank you for bringing that to our attention and looking into it.
Questions? You have to be yielding the floor. Questions? Representative Lohner?
Is it Mr. Hughes that needs to be?
Yes. Okay.
Just a quick question. I would like to know if you're aware that the Graduate Student Association actually is starting a housing committee to deal with just the question you mentioned. I think your housing orientation is a great idea, and perhaps you can coordinate with them a little bit going forward. I think you can definitely work together.
Okay.
Student trustee Rodney Hughes. Other questions for Cindy? Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to committee reports. Mr. Carvello and steering committee.
I'll be brief and just once again plug the Student Vote Exchange. You have a website, you have a very in-depth overview of how to even use it. Now take that feedback and actually put recommendations. Matt and I are working on some ideas as well to improve it, to do automatically gathering at the book material, generating your course list and all that stuff. But in terms of usability, we look forward to that. Other than that, the report is in front of you. It's pretty brief. The points, if you have questions, now's the time to ask.
Questions for Chairman Carvello? Okay, moving on to internal development, Chair Karasek.
Pat Gordon did not come before the Assembly tonight for the following reasons. He did come to the ID committee meeting. However, the ID committee, through some confusion with Gavin being sick, did not receive the description of his position, and as such, we did not feel that he should be brought before this committee. We did not even vote on it because none of us actually know what his position is going to be doing at this time, so that vote has been put off. That is the reason. My report, you have my report in front of you. If you have any questions, please ask.
Representative Lohner.
I'm not really sure that the new agenda you theoretically outlined here is the best solution, but I think it's the right direction.
Thank you.
Other questions?
That'll be coming in the form of a policy. We're trying stuff out.
Yeah, what he said is, in a week to come, they want to try to propose a policy that revamps the organization of the agenda. I want to talk to you about that a little bit later. Other questions for Mr. Karasik? Okay, moving on to programming committee, Chair Gupta.
Okay, pretty much the main thing I want to tell y'all, if you're walking in the parade on Friday, you have to be behind the IM building at 4:50. I have to check in at 3:30, but everyone else, like all the walkers, have to be there by 4:50 because we start lining up at like 5:30, and then you make sure everyone's there. So I'm going to send out an email tonight, pretty much giving y'all all the details and stuff, and then that's pretty much it.
Okay. Questions? Are we going to have under subcommittee Thon?
Yes. Oh, sorry, Thon.
Okay, yes.
I'm just going to bring up 2 points. I don't want to keep it any longer.
First of all, we are having another meeting next Thursday at 6 p.m. in the UPUA office. It's gonna be every other Thursday unless otherwise said. And second of all, First Canning Week, as you all know, weekend was this past weekend. We only did a 5-hour trip. There were 6 of us from UPUA that came out. Thank you, especially to Bruce and Cindy, Val, Benji, and I'm sorry.
It was me, you,
It doesn't
Benji,
matter, it doesn't
Ruth,
matter. And then we also
Cindy.
had our comm captain liaison come out and support us as well. Again, it was a 5-hour trip. We were only there for 5 hours on Saturday. We did happen to run into Governor Palin, who did contribute to bond. There should be a story tomorrow about that. And finally, we were very happy with the total. It was $1,019.33. So given that given just the 5-hour period that we were out there, we actually were able to cross the $1,000 threshold. So I mean, our goal of $5,200 is definitely reachable, and I definitely hope that more people come out for the next Canning weekend, so we can get 2 trips going, and we can make it more.
And we had fun.
Yes.
So questions for Ms. Gupta, or even more specifically for Representative Leonard, Representative Lombardo?
This isn't really a question, but I'll raise my voice at the end.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that I'm also a FON organization liaison, and just with that, for a group that's just starting out to raise $1,000 in their first Canning Week is really, really something to be proud about, because a lot of organizations don't even raise that much money for all of their canning trips together. So this is really good, and I encourage all of you to come out and start fawning with UPUA and really get invested into it. So thanks a lot.
Representative Corey?
Is canning the only alternative fundraiser that we're looking into?
We're also looking into possibly doing a flag football tournament. We ideally had hoped to do it at the end of November, but given the current financial situation, we will probably move that. We do it to beginning of February, perhaps into January, where we have the Super Bowl and people will be all that football and such.
Other questions, Mr. Carvello?
I yield the floor to our secretary.
Have you guys thought at all about doing a letter writing campaign?
Yes.
Okay, because I know that usually makes a lot of money. So. Yes. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't really respond to that, but as you can tell.
Okay, you won't be in the roll call at the end, so, since.
Well, thank you.
No. Any other questions for programming? Okay, thank you. Moving on to facilities, Mr. Mintz.
Okay, I'll try to be quick. Most importantly, I had kind of an interesting exchange of emails with Reslec Director Diane Andrews regarding the Commons Rec Room usage fee. She kind of went to give me the impression this is something that was approved by ours and people already know about. She already gave the specific fees and stuff. I asked her again for some documentation. She seems to be extremely hesitant in giving me that, but she said that she will forward me what kind of the new application is going to look like for groups that want to use commissary rec rooms. And to summarize that also, the fee is not going to include any groups that are just putting up tables in the commons area, just groups that want to use the rec rooms. I had a little bit of an issue moving my meetings to Tuesdays. I've been trying to do that for a while. I was told there really isn't any space available on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. I was told to look into academic space. I will consult with some people after the meeting to see if I will be able to do that. And also I want to continue to solve legislation that we had from my committee tonight. I want to continue to move forward with more internal policies for the new facilities people. So that's it.
Questions? Representative Karasik?
I heard from a Reslec coordinator that it was passed by the controller's office, so I would strongly urge you to look into that. That's all.
Look into
where it stands with the controller's office, because it may have been passed by then already, the very slight issue.
Okay.
So it may be coming sooner than we think.
She said that it will be implemented.
Other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to academic affairs, Chairman Smith.
Doing a great job. She was recently appointed our new operations chair, and they're moving forward with my 60-day plan. Also, we appointed Ellie Ockelberg to an AQ committee. And as far as into the future, next week is Senate. Really the only big thing that's on the agenda is they're drafting a quality assurance program for web-based e-learning classes. So basically, I mean, it looks solid, we'll probably move in favor of that, but I hold that meeting on Sunday. I met with Dean Hellman yesterday and had, in my ongoing series of talks with administrators of the undergraduate education administrators of the colleges, and I have a meeting most likely next week to discuss the Student Advisory Committee on ITS with Jennifer Struble, and probably, we're still working out the times, but it should be next week, so that's where it stands.
Questions? Mr. Cavella?
Is CCHG going to be at that meeting as well?
They haven't responded to my emails. My intention is to have a representative from them, because Commonwealth campuses all pay up here, but it's all administered here.
Other questions? Okay, thank you. Moving on to governmental affairs, Chair Miller.
Basically, everything is printed on the report for you. Just, I urge you to pay particular attention to point 1 because it does indicate a pretty drastic change in the 60-day plan we laid out last week. But other than that, I'll stay on the question.
Questions? Okay, thank you. Mr. Cavella. Okay, thank you. Moving on to diversity in campus life. Obviously, Representative Lucas, Chairman Lucas, is not here at this time. So would anyone from his committee like to give a brief synopsis of some sort? Stand for questions? Okay, Representative Ragland, perfect, thank you very much. Excellent job.
I guess I was looking at it earlier, but yeah, we do have a networking program coming up December. We changed the date to December 4th. Basically, get everybody involved with our committee and try to get some things out. Also, I guess I proposed connecting with the Martin Luther King Celebration Committee, because last year actually I had an opportunity to attend and he was kind of displeased with it. It was not like participation, so we're trying to get involved with that. I'm making some contacts personally, and we're still going on with the meetings, you know, meeting with the ethnic committees and ARCH and everything. So other than that, everything seems to be going as well.
Will you stand for questions? Okay, questions? How, have you started making those connections to MLK?
Yeah, I know the person in charge. Yeah, so I talked to him, let him know on a casual basis, but at the committee, we haven't invited him to like a committee meeting yet. So that was something he proposed last week. Maybe we have some time still, but I think our biggest priority is the networking committee, the networking program. But as the time draws closer, we should be on a roll with that.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay, moving on to comments for the good of the order. Representative Lohner.
I want to say, really tip my hat to Mr. Sheroff and President Sheerans for their actions at the activity board meeting. I was there and they really, in my opinion, really defended our goal very well. And I think it's just important to note that, in my opinion, Chairwoman Kendra Carr of UPAC really turned the meeting extremely negative, and I'm not sure why. She has her own reasons, I suppose. But that relates directly to the $200 resolution today. I feel terrible voting against that, but I think everyone can agree that that would be a non-issue if we had any money at all. So I urge you to keep following the activity.
Mr. Carvello.
Very briefly, just a reminder, we're in recess next week for Faculty Senate. I encourage all representatives to at least attend one Faculty Senate meeting, even if you aren't a representative or a student senator, excuse me, just to get a feel for what that body does, since many members of this organization are part of it. Also, remember that you still have obligations. You still have obligations for ARSH if you're on campus, if you volunteer for that, and the Borough Council if you're off campus and you're signed to go to those meetings. Thank you.
Representative Shermansky.
Yes, I just want to express my disgust for what the representative had to say about myself, that I should leave the UPUA because of my feelings towards candy. Now, the fact of the matter is the UPUA has tried stuff like this before. We have given out free donuts, we have given out free blue books, and we have given out free ice cream. And I still see the amount of seats in this building right now are just completely empty almost. The fact of the matter is I don't think $200 worth of candy is going to make any more of a difference than what we see right now. Granted, I think that we need to give out candy. I just think $200 is a bit much. And I'm only saying that I'm very, very disappointed in what the representative had to say about my character, saying that just because I am against something like this, I should leave this organization. I just want to make that clear.
Other comments? Okay, I have a comment real quick, I know, sorry. I totally agree with what Representative Lohner said about the Student Activity Fee Board meeting. President Kieran's and Treasurer Sheriff, they did their best. They did an excellent job. Unfortunately, the debate did turn sour, and it was really not even a debate, in my opinion. It was over pretty quickly, although it lasted for 2 hours. But with that said, I know that they will be working very, very hard to educate the members of that board better next time. And then we won't have problems like sitting here for 30 minutes debating a resolution on candy. That's not why I wanted to be vice president of this organization, to sit here and chair a meeting on candy. And I'm sure that's why the executive board was a little bit confused and, laughing, whatever. And I started to as well, and I apologize for that. It was not meant in disrespect either. It's just kind of flabbergasts me that I go to this meeting on Monday, and then we have this specific resolution that is almost directly related, and it's very ridiculous. So any kind of discussion you want to have about this, talk to Matt, talk to Gavin, talk to me, talk to Sam, et cetera, I know Ralph's going to be doing a lot of work on this as well. So this is very, very, very important. Roll call.
All right, Michael Aldinger, Mike Anderson. Here. William Barr, Jim Byrne, Ruth. All works. Ralph Carvello. Here. Sarah Donnenberg, Adam Barone. Hillary Gupta. Here. Nicholas Himes, Hubert Hines. Here. Andrew Karasek. Here. John King. Peter Corey. Here. Caitlin Kunkel. Here. Andrew Coots, Matthew Lockman, Sean Leonard, Daniel Lurch. Here. Sam Lohner. Here. Benjamin Lombard. Here. Stephen Lucas. Nick Nance. Here. Sean Malloy. Samantha Miller. Here. Christopher Morrell, Jose Baman, Christopher Knott, Ellie Ockelberg. Here. Joanne Olson, Louis Orazio. Luke Pierce, Greg Plum, Bryant Poland, Kelly Potter, Megan Quinn, Christian Ragland, Valerie Russell,
Present.
Amy Sanders, here. Carolyn Severi, Matt Sheroff,
Here.
Philip Slesser, Richard Tremansky,
Here.
Colleen Smith, here. Matthew Smith,
Present.
Michael Smith, and Michael Wallace. Cindy Wang.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.